After a week's journey across France, from the time trial on the west coast, onto the flats and into the land of the sprinters, through a massive battle of the teams on day 4, to Germany and over the Vosges. For 9 days, the riders of the Tour have raced and battled. There has been celebration and despair, victory and defeat. But today, it's a new race. Today, the battle for the yellow jersey begins as the Tour heads into the Alps to a mountaintop finish at Courchevel. Is Lance Armstrong ready for the fight? Will we see another of his now expected mountain onslaughts? And is his team ready to support him in his plight? What of T-Mobile and their three-pronged attack of Kloden, Vinokurov, Ulrich? Will their incessant attacks finally unseat the Texan, or will perhaps one of the dark horses emerge? If you want to win in 2005, your tour begins today. Stage 10 climbs into the Alps next, right here on OLN.
Welcome to the Saab Tour pre-race show. Unbelievable pictures from 6,000 feet at Courchevel, where, if you can believe it, they have an airport. And that's where the Tour has parked itself. Amazingly, all the 18-wheelers have made it up the switchbacks to Courchevel. One man will feel the glory of winning the stage, and who knows, maybe the yellow jersey will change hands again. Hi, everybody. I'm Al Troutwig. For the first time in the Tour, an American does not wear the yellow jersey. In Stage 9, Lance Armstrong watched it switch to the shoulders of Jens Voigt of Team CSC. There is nothing in American sport that rivals what we're about to see today, and here's the precursor to it. The climbs of Stage 9. Michael Rasmussen already wearing the King of the Mountains jersey, breaking out for more points and potential Rabobank glory. Lance Armstrong's Team Discovery once again showing solidarity. T-Mobile in disarray as Jan Ulrich crashes, goes to the hospital for x-rays. They're negative, he's okay, and good to go today. But a little extra tension that T-Mobile did not need. There you see a banged up knee, some bruised ribs, and when the breathing gets tough, ouch, that could hurt. Some of the insanity in a Schluck-filled hilltop. Michael Rasmussen off and rolling. No one could catch him. Christophe Moreau teaming up with Jens Voigt, former partners, making an odd collaboration to try and reel in the Breaking Dane. But it wouldn't happen. For the first time in his career, he wins a Tour de France stage and grabs the stage win of number 9. And the yellow jersey switched too, because well behind Jens Voigt was Lance Armstrong and all his rivals. Pacific Life shows you who won the stage. It was Rasmussen, then Moreau and Voigt, and then came all the rest. Stuart O'Grady grabbed some important sprint points. More on that today by finishing 4th. Voigt knocks Armstrong down to 2:18 behind and grabs the overall lead for the second time in his career. Foster's taking a look at the GC, or the battle for the yellow jersey. Lance Armstrong is really not threatened by the resumes of Moreau and Voigt in the mountains, so he's pretty much exactly where he wants to be. Julich, Basso, Ulrich, Sastre. They may be trying to do something today. That's something Lance is going to have to react to, and we want to get quickly updated on everything that's going on with all these teams. We're going to go to Frankie Andrea, we're going to go to Craig Hummer, and we're going to go to Kirsten Gum right now.
When CSC came into the Tour de France, they had one leader, Ivan Basso. But to their surprise, David Zabriskie came through with flying colors, winning the first stage time trial, beating Lance Armstrong, and wearing the yellow jersey for 3 days. But unfortunately, Zabriskie had to quit after he suffered the injuries that he got during the team time trial crash. But the mood and morale on CSC is very good. Jens Voigt has the yellow jersey, and as we head into the Alps, it's not going to be that CSC is going to be protecting Jens Voigt's yellow jersey, but they're going to be looking to unleash their leaders, Julich, Sastre, and Basso, to try to shake things up and put pressure on the peloton, hopefully before they reach the summit in Courchevel.
Do not forget about the 2 Americans, Floyd Landis and Levi Leipheimer. Now, Landis told me he likes flying underneath the radar. Currently, he is in 12th place in the overall race. He says his legs feel good. He is confident that Team Phonak can make up some time in the mountains. Stage 10 is a crucial time for all the riders. He says it is the real mountain stage and when the race begins. As for American Levi Leipheimer, he says the same thing. He feels good. He feels strong. He has confidence in his team The real race starts today. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Both riders told me they need to be attentive and aware and watch what the other GC leaders are doing the entire stage.
The climbing begins in earnest today as we head into the Alps. After yesterday's rest stage, there's no question all the teams will be ready to set their pace meter on high and get back after it. Now for the Discovery Channel, their first 9 days of racing were of course highlighted by Lance's 5 days in yellow. But if you think back to the final 2 stages before the rest day, that is where things got somewhat interesting for the Discovery Channel. On stage number 9, Lance gave away yellow that day to CSC's Jens Voigt. But you have to wonder, was that a ploy? Was it all part of the strategy? Because now the burden of defending the yellow falls on CSC and Jens Voigt's teammates. Lance has said to me a number of times as he left on the rest day, he said to me, listen, I know I've got the best team on paper. What I plan to show everyone, however, is that I've got the best team the final 2 weeks all the way through to Paris.
All right, joined now by Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen, and Bob Roll. Every team has a strategy going into today, but you can keep your strategy only to a point. After that, you have to be reactionary. How strategic is today's stage?
I think it'll be who attacks first, because normally the first day in the mountains after a rest day, the body has a strange reaction, and I think they'll wait for tomorrow for the big attacks. But one may try a tentative move. I mean, Ivan Basso has announced he will attack today, so if he does, the others must follow.
Yeah, but he also announced he was going to attack in the Pyrenees as well, so maybe not quite convinced. Maybe not quite convinced on where he's going to.
What
attack.
about Ulrich? I mean, he feels bad enough to go for X-rays, and yet they say he's good to go today. But when your ribs are hurting and you've got to breathe up these mountains, that's got to sting.
It's going to hurt a lot. I think the difficult thing for Jan Ulrich is just trying to make sure that he doesn't lose too much time. He will be hurting because that was a nasty crash. Apparently he went over 3 or 4 times, and when he went to hospital in Grenoble, they were looking to see if any of the ribs were broken. Even when you have a crash like that and they can't find a broken bone, you're sore for 2 or 3 days.
Bob, what have we learned about Lance Armstrong in the last 6 straight Tour de France wins as far as reaching the mountains on day 1?
In the first years that he won the Tour, he attacked on the first stage in the mountains and made a huge statement. In the last couple of years, he has sort of toned that down a little bit, and he's picked more strategic points. I think that Lance will prefer to watch the attacks, let the riders like Sostra, like Basso, like Kloden, and I think like Vinokurov, go on the attack, use up some of their energy. I think that Lance Armstrong is really waiting for the Pyrenees when those climbs are so vicious, any attack will probably never come back.
So the Alps start today. We have 2 mountain Category 1 climbs. They've had thousands of screaming maniacs in position for days, ready to let go on all their emotions that come with the Tour. We'll show you what the stage is made of next. This is the Saab pre-race show. The moment they announced the Tour route back in October, we looked at this one and said, okay, this is where the Tour starts getting crazy. Grenoble to Courchevel, stage 10, 120 miles and 2 Category 1 climbs. Welcome back to our finish line mobile unit here at Courchevel. I'm Al Troutwig. It is still cold enough on the slopes here to find a snowball. One of our crew members made the climb up to bring back a souvenir. Before it melts, let's go over to Paul Sherwen to explain how tough this day is going to be.
Thanks, Al. You know, today's stage is one that a lot of riders have been looking forward to, but probably most of the peloton has been fearing. Well, here's the race map brought to us by Mitch, and we're well over there on the eastern part of France. After the long transfer down from Mulhouse, today the riders start from Grenoble, and this is what the race route looks like. It starts off quite easily along the valley roads before finally tipping in towards the Alps, and the first climb of the day is the Colmé de Roselon, just inside of 2,000 meters. Down into the valley roads again before finally tipping up towards the skies and the finish line at Courchevel at 2,004 meters in altitude. That's the profile. Pretty scary, isn't it? And that final climb, by the way, up to Courchevel is 18 kilometers of ascension from the bottom right up to the top. Now the stage facts brought to us by AMD. The distance between the start and the finish is 192.5 kilometers or 120 miles, and that's roughly the distance between Atlanta, Georgia and Chattanooga. And the last time the race came here to Courchevel was back in 2000. And on that occasion, it was the great climber Marco Pantani who took the win. Unfortunately, Marco is no longer with us.
Now, I know you guys are hardened veterans of decades of experience in a race like this, but how high is your level of expectation for this stage?
Well, normally the day after the rest day, the riders just want to check out how the body's reacting to what are now serious mountains in this year's Tour de France. For that reason, and we don't know how Jan Ulrich is feeling after his crash the other day, they might just try and make a fairly easy day of it. Opportunist break may go away. I think the big showdown, if there is going to be one in the Alps, probably be tomorrow.
Yeah, they say it's only 6%, but when you drive up here, I don't care how many times you do it, you say, you've got to be kidding me.
That's crazy. It's a long way out from the top to the bottom, but I think there'll be 2 races today. You have the climbers who are a little bit further back in the overall classification. They will try and get themselves the individual glory, but guys like Armstrong, Ulrich, Vinokurov, they've got to pay very much attention to how they unfold on this climb up to the top here.
Time now for our Saab performance predictions. Fancy words for the race for the OLN yellow jersey. Boy, if only the real world were like this, where the Brits dominate the tour, you know?
Yes.
Paul Sherwen, though, pulling out Jens Voigt for a couple to move in front of Phil Liggett, breaking the logjam. I remain steady, and Bob Roll, your time is now. It's time for a mountain statement. So we make the passage to Paul Sherwen. The maillot jaune for you. The slightly askew OLN yellow jersey. Okay, it's time now to make our picks for stage 10. No easy deal. Bob, we start with you. Number 1 pick.
I'm going with Ivan Basso, the Italian on the Danish CSC team, winner of the first stage in the mountains at last year's tour. He's hungry. Watch him get some today.
Well, Bob never listens to anything I've just said. Ivan Mayo is the man who's going to win because he's going to break away in an early group, 8 minutes behind at the moment. Lance is going to say, let him have it, boys.
What's wrong with you guys? Why won't you choose Lance Armstrong? We know he has to come out and fight here this afternoon. We know he's going to rival all the attacks of Alexander Vinokurov. He's my pick.
I'm going with Yoshiba Boloki, who's been out for a while, back in the sport. He's got to make a statement as soon as he possibly can that he wants to be a player in the mix. And I think it could come today. Am I crazy?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a break. We're set for racing. Thanks for joining us on the Saab pre-race show. When we come back, we'll see where everybody stands in what should be a mountain of a climb twice today.
Time trial on the west coast, onto the flats and into the land of the sprinters. Through a massive battle of the teams on day 4. To Germany and over the Vosges. For 9 days, the riders of the tour have raced and battled. There has been celebration and despair, victory and defeat. But today, it's a new race. Today, the battle for the yellow jersey begins as the tour heads into the Alps to a mountaintop finish at Courchevel. Is Lance Armstrong ready for the fight? Will we see another of his now expected mountain onslaughts? And is his team ready to support him in his plight? What of T-Mobile and their 3-pronged attack of Kloden, Vinokurov, Ulrich? Will their incessant attacks finally unseat the Texan, or will perhaps one of the dark horses emerge? If you want to win in 2005, your tour begins today. Stage 10 climbs into the Alps next, right here on OLN. Well, the Alps are ready. I hope the riders are, because it's a beautiful day at Courchevel, and that's where the riders are heading today. Just hope my voice stays with me for the rest of the program, and we hope you do as well. I'll tell you what, there are lots of American cyclists here today, enthusiasts. The flags have been flying since 7 o'clock this morning. OLN, I knew it didn't mean Outdoor Life Network. That is Sophie, and I think the other one was Daphne. But anyway, good luck to them as we now join the action. There's our little box there. That's where we're commentating from today, waiting now for the arrival of the riders in the Tour de France. I can tell you they've got off to a great start, and they're on that record speed even today, Paul. It's going to be a great day of racing.
It's going to be a great day. 2 big mountain passes, and I tell you what, there is going to be a massive chase up the climb here at Courchevel.
All right, well, let's go back down to the start this morning in Grenoble, have a look how they all rolled out. Jens Voigt, the yellow jersey, chatting with Tom Bonen. They might be together at the end of the stage as well, which will be behind the race, of course. Lance Armstrong, probably asking Jan Ulrich, how do you feel today, Jan? As if Jan would tell him the truth anyway. And as they roll out, the flag is given by next year's director of the Tour de France, Christian Prudhomme. But soon after the start, the riders, by agreement, the organisation with these protesters, they're protesting about the wolves which were released here in the Alps back into their natural habitat, because now they seem to be eating all of the lambs. So they made the point, and the races have continued. And this was the first sprint coming after 40 kilometres at Detrier. A breakaway already on, it still is. Gianluca Bortolami taking it ahead of Fassi and Kritsov in that order. 7 riders clear of the field as we look down now from the helicopter here. And I can tell you what, on the early slopes of the Cormet de Rosamond, we are losing rider after rider. I'm a bit surprised to see Carsten Kroon being dropped.
I'm a little bit surprised to see the majority of the pace being done on the front end of the main field by Crédit Agricole. They obviously believe that Christophe Moreau can take the yellow jersey this afternoon.
Let's just confirm then who is in the lead. This group breaking away at the 0 kilometre, by the way, making a group of 7 after a few. And the riders now are in a situation where they have a lead of 6 minutes and 18 seconds. You've got Postuma from Rabobank, Laurent Brochard of Bouygues Telecom, Christophe of AG2R, Mauri Fassi of Fassa Bortolo, Luis Sanchez from Liberty Segura, Gianluca Bortolon Lampre, and Enaki Isasi from Euskaltel Euskadi. At 46 kilometres, they held a lead of 10 minutes 40, but there has been a reaction from the field, and it may well come to an end before the top of this climb. Well, we're looking now at the rear of the peloton here, which is thinning out by the metre on the climb. There's some very stiff pacemaking. The average speed is 42.3 kilometres an hour for the first 2 hours of racing. Incredibly quick. Now, the riders who started the tour way back in Noirmoutier was 189. There's 174 there now. One rider did not start today, and that was a rider from Russia, who Petrov rather, who was apparently said that he failed the random drug test for EPO. Now, they never said he'd taken EPO, but he's over the limit allowed to start the stage, which is the magical figure of 50. So he's been declared unfit to ride the Tour de France today, and is now suspended until he has his blood checked again in 15 days' time. So he's out the Tour.
Good to see Jens Voigt riding at the front, defending the yellow jersey, but just on his shoulder I caught a quick glimpse of Chris Horner riding his first Tour de France here this year, and he was looking very comfortable. A lot of riders really believe we're going to have a showdown here on the slopes of the Alps this afternoon, and I'm not surprised, because the climb up to here in Courchevel, I'd actually forgotten how long it was.
And in fact, Paul, you reminded me earlier that you've actually climbed the climb they're on now on 2 occasions, and apparently, according to you, you don't remember either attempt.
I think I must have been in a serious amount of pain, because I must have put that out of my mind. Yes, I rode over this climb on 2 occasions, once back in 1979 and once back in 1984. I think I got over the top in the group because a man by the name of Francis Castin, who was a sprinter and a non-climber like myself, was the first man to the front, to the top.
So early days yet on the climb. First big climb of the Tour de France, the Cormet de Rosamond. It takes us up with 74 kilometres to go. 1965 metres that we climb today. All right, let's have a look at the details of the climb here, brought to us by AMD. It's 20 kilometres long, this. That's 12 miles. Takes us up to that 1967 metres. Average gradient of 6%. It doesn't sound a lot, but it is a real hard grind, and that'll take us over the top, 74 kilometres from the finish. There is Jens Voigt, the maillot jaune. Just behind him, I could see also Michael Rasmussen, who is the leader in the King of the Mountains, and they're riding together. But this is the breakaway of 7. The lead now 6 minutes and 21. They're riding reasonably sensible at the moment. Joost Postuma, these are all the riders for you. Luis Sanchez is in there as well. Laurent Brochard seems to be riding okay at the moment. He loves mountains. He's won on them before. Gianluca Bortolami. Enaki Isasi, first tour for him, lying 127th overall, and Kripsov completing the lead group. The peloton just come down a little bit more, 6 minutes and 20 seconds. The yellow jersey there today is located, it's where he is. He's in the peloton. It's not on the shoulders of Lance Armstrong now, so of course it is Jens Voigt. So we'll try and keep you where he is throughout the race. The blue jersey, in fact, now is the location of Lance Armstrong. Well, there's big crowds going to be all over the Alps. We've spoken to a lot of spectators today. They've all got their plans for the next 3 days. They've got all their escape routes planned, so they'll see the riders crossing the high mountains. Tomorrow we've got the Col de Galibier, of course. It's going to be a super day out tomorrow. And today they finish on top at Courchevel. It is a hard climb to the summit. I think it's right at the moment that the main field is setting a good tempo. but they've already hurt the sprinters because many riders have been dropped from the main pack, but none of the main contenders for victory. These are the breakaways, still hanging on. So too is the Maillot Jaune of the day, Jens Voigt. He's still in there and on the climb of the Cormet de Rose. We'll see in a moment. Welcome back. The Tour de France today already on its first big contact with the real mountains of this year's race. The Cormet de Roseland taking them up to 1,967 metres. As you can see, the breakaway has split. There were 7 riders altogether. They're now going 4, going ahead of the other 3. And Jos Postuma is the one rider getting clear, along with Luis Sanchez, Laurent Brochard and Yuri Kritsov. They are the riders trying to push on now away from the rest. So it looks as though Mauro Facci is having a little bit of trouble. Now, what we're looking down here are the names of the riders in that lead group, and you will see their current standings in the Tour de France at the start today. So Postuma's 103rd, 21 minutes and 59 seconds behind. So I don't think they're going to be chasing him down. The best man in that breakaway is Laurent Brochard, 7 minutes and 58 seconds behind the leader, Jens Voigt, in 49th place. He will be regarded as something of a challenge, I think, because they know he can climb. Well, don't forget, the Tour de France is well underway now. This week we're going to spend a lot of time in the mountains, and we want to make sure you're with us again tomorrow when we will be looking at stage 11 in the High Alps. Tremendous day. We go over the highest road in Europe, in this part of the world, in the Alps, which is the Col du Galibier. We'll be live tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm afraid that's 3:30 a.m. in the morning on the West Coast. Expanded prime time coverage at 8 Eastern and 9 Pacific. Enjoy it. And also, catch ALN's exclusive coverage of Stage 11 live on the big screen if you're lucky enough to be in New York, in Times Square. We'll be starting on that big screen in Times Square at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. For those of you not in Times Square, we'll be dropping in during our 5-hour broadcast tomorrow to check in on the scene and excitement. So get down to Times Square and cheer on your favourite rider. I wonder who that is. Back with the action now on the climb of the Col de Roseland. Well, it looks as though excitement now as the riders aren't taking it quite as easy on the climb as we anticipated, Paul.
This is Alejandro Valverde trying to leap across the gap. A lot of riders trying to set up a tactical situation here, I feel, Phil, because you can see Liberty Seguros have put a man into the break. It's very dangerous to see there. In fact, the rider in the green, yellow and white jersey, Oscar Pereira of Team Phonak, he's a man who is one of the 3 leaders so far of Team Phonak. So they're obviously, everybody here is trying to set something up. That's Oscar Sevilla, who's come across as well for Team Mobile.
Pace being set there by Jörg Jatsk, who's not a bad climber on this level of a climb. But interestingly enough, there's going to have to be a reaction sooner or later from the yellow jersey of Voigt, if he can react, and indeed the teammates of, I think I've seen Chris Horner down there too.
I saw a rider come across from Sonia Duval. I wasn't quite sure who it was, but he was riding near the front end of the main field. It's very difficult to spot riders from this altitude, but we do believe that it's Chris Horner.
We'll have a look, of course, as soon as we can. There's Iban Mayo as well. I'm not too sure where he is because the service car has passed him here. Mayo, they are saying this morning, has got a knee problem, some form of tendonitis, and he's riding in the company of Peter Weening, the man who scorched away just before the rest day to win the stage down in Gérardmer. But I think on this occasion, Paul, Iban Mayo is going backwards and could be going out of the Tour.
Well, that's a shame because this is the man that over the last 2 seasons we've actually built up as a serious challenger to Lance Armstrong, and again suffering, I think, because of the big gears that we used on the flatlands, and they've obviously created this tendonitis, and that's been compounded by the bad weather we've had as well. So rather sad to see Iban Mayo in that position.
81 kilometres still to ride, so they've still got 6 kilometres to go over the top here. As we see now, the chase group is split up, and as a result of that, there is a reaction from the field. This is part of that leading group as they continue up the climb. 74 is Mauro Facci. He's coming back now to the riders who are coming up from behind, and Jus Postuma is also dropping back here. So there's a huge crowd as we can now see the flag of Breton flying there. Let's go for an update, though, from Kirsten Gunn.
Jan Ullrich is somewhat banged up this morning for stage 10. He crashed early on during stage 9, coming down the first Cat 3 climb. Now, I spoke with American Chris Horner on the Sanger Duval team after that stage, and he said he saw the whole thing and that it was pretty gruesome. Apparently, Ullrich went off the road and tumbled head over heels a couple times. Now, at that time, no one thought it was that bad, just a bloody knee. But yesterday, during the rest day, Ullrich went to the hospital to get some x-rays. He did not break anything, but he has severely bruised ribs. He also has bruising on his head. He did go for his training ride yesterday and says he feels better than ever today.
Well, it's worth noting that Lance did hold back there when he'd heard that T-Mobile's Jan Ullrich had fallen. They're trying to get them all together, and he's in the group today. Contrary to what sometimes is popular opinion around the world, they are very good friends, Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong. They want to obviously beat each other in the Tour de France, but they want to do it on a fair and square basis. Two great sportsmen. That looked like it was Daniel Nardello there, just trying to just lift the pace a little bit, because this race is just cracking up purely on the steady tempo. There's nobody really attacked, but they're dropping out the back of the bunch here, one after another. That's Pavel Patronus, number 6 for the Discovery Channel, not expected to ride well. This is the rear of the field now as they are beginning to crack one by one. Sylvain Chavanel, he was in trouble a few days ago with crash injuries. It looks like he's cracking still on the climb. Expected to have been the best French rider in this race. Hasn't shown any signs of that form since we began in Noirmoutier. The peloton containing yellow, which is Jens Voigt, blue, which is Lance Armstrong, at 5.5 minutes. So they are slowly coming down here, which is interesting because the tempo is reducing the breakaway. The great battle here on the Cormet de Roseland, because once over the top of this mountain, we race down the valley into Bourg Saint-Moritz, and we don't actually climb again until we get into Moutier, which is the town at the base of Courchevel, and then it's all uphill to the finish. And I think we're going to see quite an explosion of speed once we start that climb. So we're looking here now at the riders who are still setting the pace at the front. This is the head of the race here, but they're under pressure now, and they're not really organised anymore, are they? There's the crowds on top at 2,000 metres. We'll take a break. We'll see you all in a moment. Unless you're a rider in the Tour de France who can't climb mountains, because that's up to the top of Courchevel. The riders are heading there right now, and the front of the breakaway is beginning to crack under the strain. One sad sight is the climber Iban Mayo has been dropped by the peloton, which is getting smaller by the minute, under the pressure here of Tricky Beltran, the teammate of Lance Armstrong. Lance still tucked in a good position just behind the leader there. Floyd Landis checking out the route off to the right. This time last year he was riding on the same team as Lance. Now he wants to see, can he beat Lance and lead his own team. I'm not sure yet who is the leader of the Phonak squad, because Oscar Pereiro is also up in this front half of the peloton. Well, the stunning views which we're going to see now for the next 3 or 4 days. A real tough week ahead of the riders. But as we go down with our helicopter to find the race, let's find out how Lance is today. He's talking to Craig Hummer at the start.
In every year you've won the Tour, you've been in front on the first mountain stage. Do you feel it's important to do that again this year?
I think it's important to distance some people. I mean, if you look for the last couple of years, I haven't been alone in the front. I've been last year with Basso, the year before with it was the year before was an exception. 2002 with Baloki and Hera. So, you know, we'll try to do a good race. We'll see if we can distance some of the main rivals, because, you know, this is just, you only have 4 or 5 of these opportunities and you have to take them all.
All right, good luck today.
Thanks.
Well, making no secret of it, looking, I think, quite confident, not giving too much away, but obviously going to see if there's any weak links in the chain today as they start the climb. There's Lance in the blue jersey and the yellow jersey. These are the splits now on the highway. Chase number 1.5 a minute. That's 1/2 of the original 7-man breakaway. The peloton with Lance, and still hanging on the tail of it, Jens Voigt. 5 minutes and 5 seconds the gap. Beautiful blue waters of the reservoir today as we head up into the mountains. So, as we look at some of the stunning scenery here, let's just remind ourselves of what else is to come on OLN. And coming up next on OLN will be Outdoor Investigations, Death of a Cave Diver. It takes a look at what may have caused the mysterious death of a veteran cave diver and explorer. That's Outdoor Investigations after the Tour de France coverage, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And that, of course, is today, as we now go back to the race here. The field riding sensibly here. 5 of them got themselves back together at the front now, so there's only 2 missing. Well, these boys are riding with common sense, Paul. They know the peloton will probably be eating into their leads. They've still got 4 kilometres to climb to the top. There's no point in taking chances and blowing yourself apart, is there?
Well, they've lost a massive chunk of their advantage, though, since the bottom of the climb. They started this climb with an advantage of around about 7 minutes and 50 seconds. So they lost a huge chunk, but they realise that there's 75 kilometres to go to the finish from the top of the Cormet de Roseland. There's an awful lot of racing to do, and they want to, I think, keep together so they can try and survive and attack the final climb of the day as a group.
Well, 50 of those 74 kilometres are on the flat, of course, but the rest are uphill all the way, and I can tell you there are thousands upon thousands of people lining the road to Courchevel today. As I'll just remind you of the leaders in that group: Joost Postuma from Rabobank, Mauro Facci from the Fassa Bortolo team, Luis Sanchez from Liberty Seguros, Laurent Brochard of Bouygues Telecom, Yuri Kritsov from Team AG2R. They are the 5 surviving from an original group of 7. Here they are, just riding very sensibly here because they know they've got to go through it all again. And the climb up to Courchevel will probably take them in the region of 45 minutes.
It's going to take them a long time, and although the official distance of the climb, Phil, up to the finishing line here in Courchevel is just 22 kilometres, I think it's an awful lot harder than that, because that long road along the valley that we took this morning is also slightly uphill, and it's a false flat, and it's going to really make it difficult for a lot of the guys in this race, because they'll all be pretty much nailed before they get to the climb.
Well, so far, no trouble for Lance Armstrong today. I think he's had a good chat with his team, because they're all doing very well here. Michael Rasmussen in there as well. Well, let's just remind ourselves as to the route today, because it is not for the nervous. This is our first big mountain stage. Here's the profile brought to us by AMD. There it is. Oh dear me, look at that. A bad set of teeth, I think, as you start off in the valleys around Grenoble. Then you hit the climb they are on now, the Cormet de Roseland. Good descent, and we'll get over that. We're at 6,500 feet, more or less. Then we drop down that, and then we race up to the Altiport, which is actually an airfield on top of Courchevel. 13.5 miles of ascension to bring us home. It's a tough day, and it's a chance to see just who are the challengers and who are the pretenders in the Tour de France today. And we're on the slopes, as I say, of the Cormet de Roseland, and we've got 5 leaders. And the last time the race crossed this mountain was in 2002. Paul Sherwen crossed it twice during his period in the Tour de France. Can't remember either time. And in 2002 it was Mario Ertz, but surprisingly enough, because he wasn't a climber, who led the peloton over. Well, just looking down there, Paul, no big action. Jens Voigt is hanging on in. I think as we watch the peloton, you might catch the yellow jersey. Oh, we're going to cut away. Shame. But Jens is still there, and we wish him well to hang on to this field today. But they are beginning to drop off one by one. Tom Bonen is gone, the green jersey points leader. Thor Hushovd, who's his challenger, is gone. We haven't seen the whereabouts of Robin McEwen, but we will presume he has been dropped. But sadly, too, one man who should not have been dropped, Iban Mayo, has also been left on the climb.
Very strange, because over the last couple of seasons, 2003 and 2004, he was a very good bike rider, won himself 8 victories in both of those years. This year he has nothing to shout home about, and I thought maybe he was playing a waiting game, maybe he was preparing himself specifically for the Tour de France. He might have done that, but the big gears that we had to use over the flat stages, combined with the bad weather, cold, rainy conditions, may well have inflamed his tendon. And once again, maybe the Basque spectators in the southern part of this country will not get the chance to see Iban Mayo representing them.
Well, that is certainly would be a great shame. We've also had the champion of Austria retired today, which I think is a bit of a surprise. I thought he was racing well. Gerrit Glomser climbed off after about an hour of racing today, so he's gone. Field now reduced to 173 riders. In the breakaway is a first-time Tour rider in Joost Postuma. He's a very good climber. We've noted him all year. He's one of these guys coming through from the lower ranks of the Rabobank training nursery squads, and now he's on the big team, and he's coming through very well. Just look at these beautiful slopes here. It's a shame the riders have no time to admire the scenery, Paul, because this is a stunning area of France. We actually met a Frenchman on the top today who'd never been to the Alps before, and he was as surprised at how beautiful they were.
He was blown away by the majestic views here of the Alps, and I'm actually getting blown away there by the performance of Team Discovery Channel. Everybody debated over the weekend if they were going to crumble, because they did miss a very serious split on the way down into Gérardmer. But I think today, Phil, they are all reporting present and correct. And check out your man there, number 6, Pavel Padronos. He's very happily in this group, and he is the biggest, heaviest rider on Discovery Channel, alongside the yellow jersey, Jens Voigt.
Jens is riding extremely well. By the way, everybody, if you missed us earlier, I must apologise for my voice today, but I'm not going to abandon the Tour de France, and I'm going to stay with it all the way to Paris. I'm sure my voice will catch up with me at some stage of the event. But we're now watching, all of a sudden, Discovery Channel are laying down their authority here. They don't have the leader on the team. That is now on the CSC squad, but it's Lance Armstrong's Discovery team who are doing the ride here as if they did have the leader on the team.
But to take a quick check at a couple of the heart rates, because out there Cedric Vasseur's heart rate has just shot up to 172 beats a minute. These are only a guide. They're coming in over the internet to us to give us an idea just how difficult the races are, and we're looking at an average speed of around 10 to 14 kilometers an hour. That's not very fast, is it?
It gives you an idea, though, Paul, how steep these climbs are. You know, 10.6 kilometers an hour at the moment. That's only 6 miles an hour. And this is amazing. Jens Voigt, though, looks as though he might be unhitching himself. Come on, one big effort, Jens. You're only about 3 kilometers or so to climb.
Well, you're not supposed to take sides, but I'd like to get up there and give Jens a good psychological push here, because he's a great guy. He's probably one of the most likable riders in the main field. And that smile is not really a smile, it's a grimace. And I thought he was funny the other day when he was interviewed in the yellow jersey, and he said, well, I think I'll defend it tomorrow. But unfortunately tomorrow, which was yesterday, happened to be the rest day.
That was his fine German sense of humour. And Jens, what he'll be thinking about now is, I'll just hold them in sight as long as I can. Because if he gets over the top, as Paul said, minute to 90 seconds behind, he'll descend his way back into the group.
It is not over yet, I'll tell you this, because this man will not give up. What he has to do at this point is not panic, find a rhythm which is almost comfortable for himself, because you're never comfortable on the slopes of a mountain like this, and hope that he loses a minute to a minute 30 at the top of the climb. And like little Tommy Voeckler last year, he should be able to reintegrate the group on the descent. But I don't think he will hold on the final climb of the day. All the big names here at the front, Levi Leipheimer, Cadel Evans, Andreas Kloden, Bobby Julich. This one there is the man who thinks he can have the yellow jersey at the end of the day, Christophe Moreau.
He's the next candidate if Jens doesn't finish, because Christophe is in 2nd place overall, and if he can just keep the other boys in sight, he would be the next yellow jersey of the Tour. And you think he doesn't know that, because that's what he's aiming at right now. There is Jens struggling at the back, but keeping his tempo to the level of the hill, and as soon as it levels, he's kicking back into the race.
He hasn't given up yet, has he? Jens Voigt, the German rider, former East German, formerly raced on the same team as Jan Ullrich when they were amateurs, and he is holding on to his yellow jersey just by the scruff of the yellow jersey at the moment. I think he'll get over the top of this climb and not lose too much and manage to stay in contact on the long descent down into the valley below, but after that, it's going to be a difficult day for Jens.
Well, as Discovery said, all of the tempo, we're 2 kilometers from the summit right now on the climb here. Jens is coming back in as they've slowed down just that little bit. And here he comes. Well done, Jens. Big final effort. Races back in. You see, what we always say is when you pull on the golden fleece of the Tour de France, the maillot jaune, it makes you ride like 2 men. And Jens Voigt is back in the action.
He certainly is back in the action. You've got to take your hat off. Get behind the man in the yellow today.
4th man in line here is George Hincapie. And Oscar Pereiro is the rider in the white and green and yellow strip, and he's dicing with his teammate Floyd Landis, I think, as to see who might lead that team once we come out of the Alps. Jens is back, will be gone, but only for just a short time. See you in a moment. Back as we look at the tempo being made, about 4.5 minutes the gap now to the peloton. There's Michael Rasmussen, that white red spotted jersey, the king of the mountains, after 2 fantastic days in the mountains before the rest day yesterday. The chase is still a split from the breakaway at 42 seconds, and these are the riders in the leading group. Joost Postuma is 103rd at 21 minutes 59. Luis Sanchez as they're heading up towards the summit. Here we are over the top, and Laurent Brochard is the rider who has gone through, I think, first, and there he is as we go over the top of the mountain. So Laurent Brochard escapes the summit just about. He's a good descender. This looks like Oscar Pereiro having a little dig, is it, as they come up towards the line. He's going to try and steal a few points. I'm a bit surprised that Michael Rasmussen has not come after him and tried to gain a few points at the top of this mountain, but he hasn't. Pereiro goes over, and here's the group, good tempo riding. That's all Lance wanted to do today, was bring that group up together. About 45 men in that big group. Little surprise there that Michael Rasmussen, Paul, didn't make an effort to grab a couple of points. Pereiro is the rider who snatched best of the rest. Sitting in 7th place overall in the race as we start the descent now.
Well, Pereiro has been very aggressive. He's actually looking to get himself off the front end of the main field. But also, Jorg Jats has been very aggressive here this afternoon. It's as if these two teams are actually trying to set something up. Pereiro is regarded as one of the 3 leaders of Team Phonak, with Santiago Botero and, of course, Floyd Landis. But he's given himself a little bit of a free hand here to try and open up some lead.
Well, the blue and the yellow jersey down there. As we look here now at these two riders, still a little way to go. It's a bit of a false flat. But, you know, well, if Jask is trying to soften up the race here, Paul, I think it possibly is for Roberto Heras.
Well, Heras has had no problems at all over the flat stages. Always looked pretty good. He's not really lost all that much time. He's in 21st place overall, 5 minutes 16 behind Jens Voigt, but only 3 minutes 20 behind Lance Armstrong. And of course, the big question mark for everybody in the peloton, everybody in the press room, is Yoshiba Belocchi, because Belocchi, in fact, although he's done nothing all season, is still 18th overall.
Yes, and he may have found his form and is telling nobody about it. Today he may want to show it, of course. So Pereiro still ahead here with Jatsk. Leaders, remember, are now speeding towards the valley. You can expect speeds of 80+ kilometers an hour. Laurent Brochard first over the top of the climb, waiting for the full result there. Well, we've always felt there have been 3 potential leaders of Phonak: Pereiro, Botero, and of course Floyd Landis. Now, there might be a bit of infighting here as Pereiro tries to establish his claim for the leadership of the squad.
I think there's less likely to be infighting with Team Phonak, who seem to be a very good group of riders, a group of friends. Where the infighting is likely to be is in Team Mobile. And I was just reading what Eddie Merckx had to say about Lance Armstrong's performance over the weekend, and he felt that Lance Armstrong was already starting to take advantage of the animosity that seems to be building between Jan Ullrich and Alexander Vinokurov.
Well, infighting can destroy teams, and it's stupid if you let it get a hold of you. If the guy's on the team and he's in the Tour de France, you've got to get on with him whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, then of course you can leave next week and join another team. Heading up towards the summit, Jatsk and Pereiro, neither at the moment have an interest in the King of the Mountains, so they may not attempt to sprint this out. No signs of a reaction from Rasmussen, who's still riding alongside Lance Armstrong's group at the head of the field, so it's Jatsk who goes over here, followed by Oscar Pereiro. I'll tell you what, that threat of thunder might be real. As we saw the dark clouds there at the moment. And so as we look to the field here, now they're heading up towards the summit and surviving to fight on to the next big climb. Talking about that, here's one mega event following another. Immediately following the final stage, the Tour de France, will bring you back to the island. Survivor Lives on OLN. We'll show you the first castaways, the first alliances and the first betrayals. And for the first time in 5 years, see the first unforgettable season. So grab your torches, head back to camp. Survivor Lives on OLN, and the date, July the 24th. Tobias Steinhauser sitting in the back, just checking on his with his chat with the boys behind.
I don't know if you saw that acceleration there by Jens Voigt. It was unbelievable. He actually accelerated to halfway up through the main field, so he's still in contact. He's still in the yellow jersey.
Good for him, and he's on his way down. So the Cormet de Roseland is over for this year at least. There's an 100 kilometers an hour at the moment on the way down.
We're doing a quick conversion. That's 62 miles an hour going downhill. That's pretty impressive on a bike that's got tires that are not much more than an inch wide. This is a very fast descent. Now you see here Jorg Jats just pushing Oscar Pereiro. This low profile position they're trying to get into is a very precarious thing to do, but it is almost the same position that a ski racer adopts when he goes downhill. And amazingly enough, I've done this many times. You go downhill a lot faster like that than you can do if you're actually pedaling.
Well, he's got a chance. If he keeps up speeds like this, he'll pull back the leaders. Brochard still on his own and being chased by Postuma, Facci, Sanchez, Kritsov. Then we've got the other two remnants of the breakaway, Bortolami Isasi and then we've got Pereiro and Yatsk. That is the order on the descent, and after Pereiro and Yatsk, we have all of the other fancied riders in a big group, including Leipheimer and Chris Horner of America. You can see the World Championship markers on the sleeves there of Laurent Brochard. But while we watch Brochard, let's have a look now at the Honda highlight of the day. It's 48 hours ago now, of course, since Michael Rasmussen really established himself as a great climber. His second Tour de France, he won all of the climbs on the eve of the rest day, waiting for no one. Notice he never carries a drinking bottle on the way uphill, he takes it only on the way down. He wins the stage, increases his lead in the King of the Mountains at the same time. A great double for him. That was our Honda highlight of stage 9. Right, well, this is the problem here. Flat tyre for Axel, no, big was Axel Merckx. It is in fact Christoph Brandt. Now he is a fancy climber on the Lotto team. He's, in fact, that is a plastic bag there, and this is a real wrestling match. It's somebody's racing gate, might be his own, out of his pocket. At least he's got the wheel out, so there'll be a new wheel going in. He should be okay. He's in a. It would have been a problem had he been caught going uphill. He was in the Armstrong group there too, as Laurent Brochard continues at a rate of knots heading for Courchevel. And he's certainly not waiting for the 4 riders who are chasing him by just about 12 seconds. I would have thought a few more would go quicker. We'll find out soon. We are back with the Tour de France here, and the latest news coming in from Radio Tour. 3 minutes 50 back to the group containing Lance Armstrong behind the leader on the road, and Laurent Brochard is giving everybody a lesson in descending. There's the peloton. The yellow jersey is Jens Voigt. That's where he is. Lance Armstrong's in the same group in the blue jersey. Little request here for assistance from the back here. And the Dimitrov Kani rides there is Maxim Iglinski, Kazakhstan, new rider, first Tour de France for him. Probably wants a drink. Tobias Steinhauser here, teammate of Jan Ullrich. In fact, Jan Ullrich goes out with Tobias Steinhauser's sister. As we're now looking at the field regroup at the moment. 55 seconds to the main chasers. Let's remind ourselves today with our Bank of America standings where all the riders from the US are this morning. Lance Armstrong sitting in 3rd place at 2:18. Bobby Julich, everybody's saying he's riding very, very well, by the way, in 6th. George Hincapie, Floyd Landis in 12th in the front group. Levi Leipheimer, Chris Horner. Only Fred Rodriguez at the moment is not in this very select group of riders on the climb, so we don't expect Fred to be there. He is a man of the flats and he is a sprinter, and that's the standings today, brought to us by Bank of America. These are the 2 chasers here. They're still clear of the peloton, and that is Jörg Jatsk at the back and Oscar Pereiro up front. Well, these 2 making what seems to be a much more gentle descent here, because Laurent Brochard is scorching the road.
Brochard has got to take all the risks. He wants to build himself up a maximum advantage on this descent because he knows he has a very long ride down the valley roads. Oscar Pereiro is handling this descent to absolute perfection, and he's putting a slight gap between himself and Jörg Jatsk. You just notice Jörg Jatsk looking down. He was checking to make sure that he was in the right gear coming into this technical part of the descent.
Just wondering if Jatsk is a little bit nervous here, as he's finished 5th this year in Paris-Nice, the race he's won in the past. But he's had his problems too. Last year he broke his arm in a crash. He also had a broken elbow in a different crash. He's really been in the wars. That was all last year, and I'm wondering if perhaps he's a bit worried about the descent. Here's Brochard back up front.
Well, Brochard is really doing a great job around these corners. It's a very technical descent. Fairly rough the surface as he clips around the apex. You see how he swings as quickly as he can over to the right so he can cut into that corner again. Very much the same way as a motorbike rider will handle these corners, except that in a situation like this, on a technical descent like this, the motorbikes actually cannot keep in contact with the bike rider.
No, you're absolutely right. Postuma and Kritsov are chasing, by the way, at about 20 seconds now. So here is Life at the back. Now, they're okay. Lance Armstrong there, being joined by Guerini, just to make sure he stays safely in the peloton. He hasn't shown us any signs yet of weakness, so I think maybe he's getting through the day okay. As he starts the SS2 here, they're descending with much more common sense right now than they than they do at the leaders group, of course. All right, well, let's have a look at Bike Beat now with Frankie Andreu, who's looking at the Discovery Channel's mountain bikes.
The Tour de France is divided into 3 different segments: the time trial stages, the flat stages for the sprinters, and the mountains for the climbers. Well, as we get ready to head into the Alps, the Discovery Channel has a bunch of climbers on their teams. So we spoke with Scott Darbert from Trek to find out about their climbing bikes.
This is Lance's Madone SSLX prototype bike. This is a bike he'll be racing for the rest of the tour, especially in the mountains. What makes this bike special is that it is right on the UCI weight limit of 6.8 kilograms, which is about 15 pounds. The frame alone weighs about as much as a quart of milk. Another thing that makes this bike special is there's a boron material, an OCLV boron material in the bottom bracket, and boron makes the bike quite a bit more stiff so that it's more efficient and helps Lance get up the hills. Lance is also using a carbon fiber handlebar here. In the center section here, there's boron material, which helps make the bar stiff, and then carbon fiber on the outside. So this bar is exceptionally light and also has some really classic bends, so it's comfortable for a lot of different riders. To complement Lance's light bikes, we've given him a light set of wheels. This is a Bontrager Race XXX light wheel set, made entirely out of carbon fiber. Now, when you use carbon fiber in the rim, you have to use a special cork brake pad. The cork brake pads allow the wheel to work normally on all the descents.
Well, there we are. That's Bike Beat with Frankie Andreu. Boy, those bikes are light, aren't they? Well, we're looking now at Jaroslav Popovic here, who has just crashed on the descent and has been put back on his bike. And so he looks as though he's got a chase in front of him now as he makes his way down the mountain here. He seems okay. Slight mistake. This is what happened. He's got a bike. Looks down. He had a new wheel. I would reckon, judging by the marks on the road there, that he punctured crucially on that bend and went straight into the wall. But he seems okay. He's chasing back to join the leaders now. Shouldn't be a problem getting back on this long descent in the valley roads as well behind him, of course. As we move up towards the front runners again, that breakaway is still clear. Laurent Brochard is still out front. But these boys taking a lot of risk now because this is actually at the rear of the field and they are trying to get back in touch with the peloton. Let's hope one of these two is Iban Mayer. It's not the boy at the back though, it's Camano. We'll take a quick break, stay with us.
What more can he possibly do?
Welcome back. The Tour de France still descending here. The Cormet de Roseland at about, they topped at 74 kilometers to 8. Laurent Brochard still 20 seconds ahead of two chasers, Postuma and Kritsov. These two riders trying to get on terms. They're still ahead of the bunch. And the bunch now slipping back a little bit at 4 minutes and 55 seconds. That's where Lance Armstrong is and the yellow jersey of Jens Voigt. Now we're hearing that in fact the crash, which we only cut to late, of Jaroslav Popovic, he was in collision with a team car on the way down. He got away pretty quickly and at the moment he should get back into the bunch and up alongside Armstrong. But this is the man who's blazing the trail now. He's almost off the mountain here. Laurent Brochard, he's actually pulled away from the chasers. He's over 20 seconds ahead of them, clearly not waiting for them, believing he can hold them off and then go up the mountain on his own. He won't be a marked man by the main field yet, and so nobody's going to chase him down. Obviously if he slows down they'll catch him anyway, but if he stays strong he really has a chance of taking out the stage for France, and that would be very welcome today because the French riders are not having a great Tour de France right now. Wearing the rainbow jerseys, band on his cuffs and collar as a former world champion as he comes up here into the sprint in Bourg-Saint-Maurice, leaving himself 54 kilometers still to go, of which the last 22 or so are all uphill. So he's got about a 20-mile ride now to the base of Courchevel. But he gets the points and a very small time bonus, which neither will interest him at this stage. There'll be plenty of cheers, though, for this French rider. It's also an all-French team, Bouygues Telecom, the national telephone company of France. So it's they'll be very pleased with the way he's riding his stage today. As I say, Brochard, a previous winner at Lazamazan. All right, well, while he makes his way, don't forget, as we see here, Paul, heading up towards the race now, I've got a feeling that Brochard might stay away, you know.
I think Brochard might stay away. He's going here through the 54 to go point. This is Bourg Saint-Maurice. He'll get himself maximum points, bonuses, and about 800 euros into his back pocket. But he's not really thinking about that. Currently, what he wants to do is try and conserve as much of his advantage as possible. He's not a long-term danger to the major stars of the tour like Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong, so he may well be given a certain amount of freedom. But there will still be a battle on the slopes up to Courchevel. Gianluca Bortolami's done a pretty impressive descent here because he was dropped very early on the climb, and he's caught the three chasers. There he is just at the front. He's a tough bike rider, Bortolami, almost 37 years of age.
Well, he's got back up. They know now, though, he's a bit weak on the climb, so they'll happily keep him with them because he might be good help on the flat. They're coming in now. They're about that 20-25 seconds behind Brochard, because this is Postuma here, just getting a bottle on board, not interested in the sprint. Bortolami's going to take it for what it's worth for him. So Bortolami goes over, and then in second place goes Kritsov. So as Bortolami continues the chase on the way now, I hope you're all signing up for this because this is the most interesting one. Active.com is your one-stop shop to find information on training articles, the message boards, and thousands of endurance sports such as cycling, triathlon, and indeed running. You can visit active.com today. You can register online straight away. You can also sign up for the Daily Tour, which is our free Tour de France newsletter, including updates, insightful commentary, chance to win cycling prizes. This is an exclusive partnership between active.com and olntv.com. Yuri Kritsov having a very good day today for the Ukraine, and the Ukraine turning in some great bike riders at the moment. They've just won the under-23 European Championships as well, so there's more good riders coming out of that country, and they'll no doubt have pro contracts next year. This is Oscar Pereiro, he's arriving somewhere near the sprint area himself now with Jörg Jatsk. This race has a feeling occasionally it might all come together before the climb.
I think it might. We're back still with the main peloton who are descending off the slopes of this climb. And I'm wondering a little bit about the move of Team Phonak and Team Liberty Seguros. They're obviously trying to set something up for a little bit later on in the event. Patrick Sinkiewicz coming up through there for a quick step. I had noticed that Michael Rogers looked pretty comfortable on the climb. It's nice to see him riding at the front end of this group.
He must know something we don't, because there's so many. He must be the most popular rider as far as sign writing and banners go on the climb up Courchevel today, the Australian World Time Trial Champion, because everybody seems to be supporting Michael Rogers. Well, this is Jörg Jatsk leading them through the chase point here as they continue. Well, I wonder what our Crestor weather three-stage forecast we can give you here. Here we are. Let's see what's in store for us all. Tomorrow, stage 11, we're still very much in the red, heading up to the snow. We still think that's an excellent chance for Lance to make his move. On stage 12, he gets a little bit ripply, but it's not quite as mountainous. Full sun, 88 degrees. And on stage 13, yippee, flat roads. Tell Robin McEwen and Tom Bonan they can sprint again, but look at the temperature. They're expecting 91 degrees on Friday. And as we look down here at the peloton now, they are just coming off the descent of the Cormet de Roseland and heading down towards the sprint in Bourg Saint-Maurice, which leaves them 54 kilometers to go. The gap not getting that much closer to Laurent Brochard of 54 seconds, but they are reorganizing themselves down here. This is Sanchez just joining on. Jörg Jatsk is saying, come on, stay with us. We're intending to catch up with the leaders. Laurent Brochard here may have something else to say about that. This has been a very big break by him. He's not a loner at this sort of a break. He's done it before. He won a stage in 1997, the only other stage he's ever won, into Loudainvielle. But he has been the king of the mountains in this race, or leader rather, not the king of the mountain. He was a leader of the race in the same year, 1997. So as the riders attempt to draw themselves together here and see if they can hit the mountain first ahead of Lance Armstrong on the boys. Lance Armstrong will be very happy with the way things are going. A little bit sad that Popovic has crashed though. There's the peloton. As the riders head down into the valleys before the last big climb of the day up through Courchevel. It's been an active race so far. Sanchez has now caught up with Laurent Brochard. The two riders working together. They are seconds ahead of a chase group. and it does not yet include Jörg Jatzk and Oscar Pereira. They are trying to reach the remnants of the breakaway. But now Sanchez is drawing Brochard. This breakaway might begin to start making ground. These still are of no concern to the main field and the heads of state. Lance Armstrong back there along with Jan Ullrich, Ivan Basso, Alexander Vinokurov, and indeed the yellow jersey of the day, Jens Voigt, who was in difficulty on the previous climb, but is now back in that pack. This is Brochard. Chase is at 2:11, and it's they're starting to pull away a little bit now. There's plenty of chance. The 55-second one is the remnants of the breakaway. The other one is Jatzk and Pereiro. They're relaying each other very, very ordinary now. This is useful at the moment. Well, not long ago, Jaroslav Popovic, who did fall, a very nasty crash, I thought, has got back into the field. And here he is. He came straight up the peloton, waved at the camera. George Hincapie took a look at him and said, boy, and carried on studying the rest of the race route. But he's back with the doctor at the moment, but he is okay. So at least his pride is dented, but hopefully not his body. These are the two leaders of the day, and this is beginning to look like a nice combination now. Luis Sanchez and Laurent Brochard, one-on-one, both can climb hills. Both at this moment in time do not affect the destiny of the yellow jersey. Sanchez here, I think he's talking sign language to Brochard, because I don't think Brochard speaks Spanish. So they're trying just to ride ready at the moment, just keep it going as they can. But the man who made the big demon descent today at 100 kilometers an hour was Laurent Brochard. So let's have a look at the Saab power descent of the former French world champion. Take a look at this. This is the way to go down hills. He'll be getting around those corners round about 50 to 60 kilometers an hour. Defy a car to go around with him and hold his wheel. But as they continue the descent, they'll go down at up to 100. So the corners are around 30 to 35 miles an hour. The descent at anything up to 65 miles an hour. And that's our descent with Saab today. Some power involved in that. Down from the helicopter, this is the main field containing the top riders, and they're happy at the moment to sit back and watch. Brochard is on an inspired day here, Paul, celebrating his 11th Tour de France. Finished 29th last year. He's had high finishes. He was 18th back in 1996. Disqualified in 1998 along with all the rest of the Festima team.
Yes, he was, but since then he's served his suspension, got himself back to the top of the sport, and he's been fairly aggressive over the last couple of years. We're looking at these two riders, Luis Leon Sanchez, a 76th overall at the start of the stage, 12.5 minutes behind Lance Armstrong, very similar to Laurent Brochard. He's almost 8 minutes behind Armstrong in the overall classification, so they're not really a danger to the overall result after 3 weeks of racing. So I'm sure that's why they're being given here, Phil, a certain amount of freedom. And Iban Mayo, somehow or another, has managed to drag his way down that mountain and reintegrate this peloton. He's got a couple more days to try and recuperate, but when you get something like tendinitis in the Tour de France, it's not the ideal terrain to get better.
Well, just look at that now. Armstrong got his riders again in front. It's a little bit more difficult to pick Lance out today, of course. He's not in the leader's yellow jersey. He lost it on the run into the rest day to Jens Voigt. Voigt is back in that bunch. And I can tell you, Levi Leipheimer is also here. And Levi has got his whole family waiting for him on the summit today.
Just over on the left-hand side, I'm not sure if you caught sight of that Lotte rider. That was Cadel Evans. Cadel's riding a pretty sensible race too. He's 25th overall currently, 5 minutes 47 behind. I think all of that, Phil, is going to change this afternoon, because we'll see a complete jumble and rejumble of the overall standings.
Just a little bit concerned about the weather changing, because there are heavy clouds coming in off the mountain and the wind has got quite strong at Courchevel. As we look here at the riders on the way, well, let's do our jersey update here, courtesy of ThinkPad, and we'll explain all the leaders to you. There is Voigt, the yellow jersey, and he's got that on his shoulders today, and let's hope he can survive. Tom Bonen in green has got a lead he can't lose today, but he's behind the race in the green points. Vladimir Karpic is the best rookie of the Tour, highest placed of the young riders under 26, and he wears the white jersey. Michael Rasmussen, he's in the polka dot, leader of the King of the Mountains. There are jersey stars, and that brought to us by ThinkPad. These are the two leaders, and Sanchez there in his first Tour de France has now joined Tour de France veteran, which is Laurent Brochard. Sanchez, though, has had 3 wins this year. He's a good time trial rider as well. He's probably best remembered for his victory this year in the Tour Down Under. Yeah, that's in Australia, in case you didn't know that. There's the gaps coming at you. 5:50 to the yellow jersey is Voigt and the blue jersey of Armstrong. They're in the main field. There won't be a reaction just yet. They will just continue to play cat and mouse with their rivals in the main pack. We're on the valley road now, but Paul Sherwen did point out earlier, although it is a valley road, it does go up and down, so it's not completely flat. But there's no big crowds yet, no big climbs rather yet, until we come to the last one of the day, which is a long way up to Courchevel from Moutier, the other side of Albeville. One man is back. There's his crash. He got back into the peloton. He gave us a wave. All is well for Popovic. See you in a moment. Welcome back. Look at those clouds. They've suddenly swung in across the finishing line here at Courchevel, and you can see the flags flying straight now. The wind has in fact got up. I hope it's not a wet finish, but there is a possibility. And down there, this is Lance Armstrong. He still looks a little bit pained, but I don't think that's a problem. He's got his whole team setting the pace now, and all of his main rivals still in this group, which is getting bigger. It was only 40, it's now up to more than 60 riders as the boys are chasing off the mountain and integrating in the peloton. Luis Sanchez up front has caught Laurent Brochard, and the young 21-year-old is now waiting for the arrival, I think, of his team captain Jörg Jatsk, who is in a chase group just behind. So I think they're telling him to wait now for Jatsk there. Anyway, don't forget, coming up next here on OLN today is Outdoor Investigations, the death of a cave diver. It takes a look at what may have caused the mysterious death of a veteran cave diver and explorer. That's Outdoor Investigations next here on OLN, straight after the coverage of the Tour de France today. There's Brochard, not interested in the conversation. Well, Brochard knows now he's got a problem here because Sanchez has been told not to work until his teammate gets up with him. Well, it's good tactics, all friends in love and war. Good move by Liberty Seguros to put 2 men up here.
Great
Here
move
they
by
come.
Great move by them, because look what's happening. You see the power of the 2 riders who came across. Pereira and Jörg Jatsk is actually pulling them back, and you can be absolutely certain now that the team orders will be different, and we'll see a new vigor coming into the pedaling style of Luis Leon Sanchez.
And Asasi in the orange jersey, he's just off our camera at the moment, did stay with the chase, and he's come back up to the leaders. So there are 9 riders here now. Sanchez and Brochard have been joined by Postuma of Rabobank, Pereira of Phonak, Facci of Fassa Bortolo, Jatsk of Liberty Seguros, Bortolami of Lampre, Isasi of Euskaltel, and Kristoff of AG2R. That's the composition now of the breakaway. Now, none of these riders are near enough to Armstrong, Vinokurov, Ulrich or Basso, the big favourites for the Tour. So they've got no reason to whip up the chase just yet. So this is the main field here. Look at the size of it now. So many riders have come back together. Just on 25 miles, 40 kilometres left to race today. The peloton is just under 5 minutes behind. Having said they've no reason to get up there, Paul, it looks as though Lance has told his team to ride.
Well, look at that time gap at 4:47. 4:38 to the main field. In fact, it's making it a little bit precarious with the position there of Oscar Pereira, and I think that's probably why Lance has asked the guys to come to the front. But this afternoon, all of the riders from Discovery Channel are in the front end of the race. This is big Pavel Padrinos on the front, doing all of the pace-making, whipping up the pace and stretching that main field out into a very long line. I think we're setting ourselves up for a great finale.
So as we look here now at the field, regrouping, Armstrong is up there. He's told the Discovery team to ride at the front. Well, while we're watching the peloton, let's remind you of our famous Lance 25, which is brought to you by BMW. We're going through what we think is the top 25 moments of Lance's career. We're now looking at number 12 here. when Lance wins at Sestria, not too far away from where we are today. It's crossing the Italian section of the Alps. It all happened in 1999. Stage number 9 it was then. Armstrong was simply brilliant. He was with the breakaway. He launches the attack. There is no response here as Lance starts to drive on away from the field. Escartine tried to limit his losses. He couldn't hang on. Remember, this is when Lance was becoming a tour hero in his first big comeback year. And he won his, of course, but he was chased all the way home. So Lance was on his way to 6 victories at least. Don't forget, you can vote for your favourite of our top 25. Vote for the top 5 at olntv.com. And by the way, we are getting some tremendous votes there, so keep it coming and we'll reveal all later. Back with the race here, Discovery Channel. Still a little bit mystifying to me as to why Lance has told these boys to ride hard at the moment. He might be concerned with 1 or 2 rides in that breakaway, but I don't see why. Maybe Ivan Basso's team is there. Ulrich's boys in pink are all there. There's all the helicopters, by the way, that carries the VIPs up to the top, all getting ready for takeoff now, because for them, from this very point, it is precisely 14 minutes flight by helicopter to the top of the mountain. That's the way to travel. For these boys, we are about an hour and a quarter still to race. So the peloton is now at 4 minutes here. They are closing in. For some reason, Armstrong wants to play games today. Maybe he wants to win. We're going to find out as we approach Courchevel. See you in a moment. Of the Tour de France today as the big peloton here is snaking its way now. They're about 10 kilometers or so from the base of the climb at Moutier, which will take us onto the final climb to the finish. And the Discovery team have been told by Armstrong to ride, to bring back that breakaway. They are clearly concerned because of the presence in it of Oscar Pereiro, who started the day 5 minutes 12 seconds down, but he is seen as a danger because he can climb mountains. So Armstrong taking no chances here, and I must say that the teams of T-Mobile and CSC, who should also show concern, are offering no assistance whatsoever. This is all Discovery doing the chase. Well, it's a good move by Pereiro, and it's a good move by Armstrong not to fall asleep on this one as they race now towards the base of the climb. But what is this speed going to do to the race once they do hit the climb, which is some 14-15 kilometers up Courchevel? Pretty steep slopes as well. There are 9 riders in the lead, but the one they are concerned about, Oscar Pereiro, started the day 5 minutes 12 seconds back, and now they've got into inside 4 minutes. There's the 9 front runners, Brochard and Postuma in that breakaway, attacked the minute the flag went down today, so they've been away literally every inch of the stage. They're brave men, aren't they? Hoping to stay away for the day. Now here's something I've enjoyed doing. Hey kids, it's time for the tour. Log on to MikeandTheBike.com for all the action from the Tour de France with games, tour facts, daily updates. Sponsored by OLN and Mike and the Bike, available at Amazon.com and all of your favourite bookstores. The foreword, by the way, by Lance Armstrong. So there's the peloton snaking along the same valley. The railway tracks on the left. We're heading for Moutier. And there is the speed over the road now of the peloton. 3:42 is the gap. The yellow jersey of Voigt is here. The blue jersey of Armstrong is here. 3 minutes 40. And they have decided, Paul, they want a nice little levelling of the field before they start the climb.
I think they do. This is, I think, answering a lot of questions that anybody was asking the other day about whether or not Discovery Channel were up to the job at hand. I think today they've stood up and said, here we are. We are Team Discovery Channel. We are ready to support Lance Armstrong, and we will not get caught out again as we did on Saturday on the road into Gérardmer.
They have got what we say in cycling parlance, the hammer down. They are racing, and the order very definitely has gone out from Lance. Just look at the concentration on the faces of his teammates now. Gone, I think, are the memories of 3 days ago when suddenly the team weren't by his side. He was isolated. Boy, he's made them pay the price. He's worked them pretty hard since, hasn't he?
Well, you know, in the main field, the old heart rates are starting to pop up in this group because we're looking at an average speed in excess of 50 kilometers an hour. And there aren't many heart rates, Phil, that are going to be below the 150 beats a minute mark. and that's roughly an indication that everybody is working here at around about 85% maximum.
One retirement today, by the way, if you're just joining us. So we lost the champion of Austria, Gerrit Glomser. Also one non-starter thrown out of the tour because his blood count was too high on the spot checks by the world body today. 33 riders tested, and in fact Evgeny Petrov of Lamprey, his blood count was said to be above the allowed limit of 50, which indicates the use of EPO. But all they say in situations like this is he is not healthy enough to take part in the race. So they stopped him from riding. Looking at the speed here, Gianluca Bortolami riding very well in this breakaway. There are 9 riders here, but we are now following the Valley Road. We're not far from Moutier, and there's only one way out of Moutier today, and it's up the hill and it's up the road to Courchevel. The Discovery boys are trying to catch them before they start the climb. We'll take a break. Welcome back. We're that much closer to the climb now. That's Oscar Pereira going through. Here comes the peloton out of the tunnel. There's a few of those in this area as we race now to Moutier, where we start the ride up to Courchevel. 3 minutes 31, the gap at the moment to the yellow jersey of Jens Voigt and the blue jersey of Lance Armstrong. So they've come down. It's much more manageable now. And I can tell you, all of the sprinters today who were dropped on the climb have now got themselves in a large group at the back. They include Robbie McEwen, Robbie Hunter of South Africa, Nicholas Jalabert, and of course Magnus Bagstead, Tom Bonen, all riding along, just trying to beat the time limit today in what we often refer to as the autobus. This is the breakaway of 9. The most dangerous man is driving on the front here, Oscar Pereira, as he continues on his way. Now, here's something for you to do, and we hope you'll take part in it. He has been an inspiration to us all, hasn't he? So OLN is saying thank you to Lance Armstrong for the pleasure over these years. And you can as well. Visit olntv.com and leave your message and give Lance a big send-off into retirement on the last day of this year's Tour de France. Looking down on the beauty of the valley of Moutier now from halfway up the climb here of Courchevel, as they are now beginning to start this climb. They'll be just a few minutes away. Now, one man who is actually riding better than ever and is riding very quietly is Bobby Julich. Here's Frankie Andreu talking to him.
Your role on the team for today's stage, are you going to have to ride, or are you going to be able to stay protected before that final climb?
Things can change on the road for sure, but right now I'm looking after Ivan, and of course I'll have to ride when Bjarne says drop the hammer if I can, but hopefully I won't have to do anything before then. That's the tactic.
So is your team planning on riding to protect the jersey for Jens Voigt and try to keep him in yellow?
No.
Little different strategy then. How are you feeling? Are you feeling a little bit nervous for today, or you've been kind of anticipating this?
Actually, I'm really enjoying this tour so far, and you know, after a couple hard years, just to have this feeling again and to have decent legs at this stage of the race and be in decent overall position, honestly, I'm just really enjoying it. And yeah, there's always nerves, but this is what I wake up in the morning for. This is what it's all about. I mean, that's why I ride my bike, days like this.
All right, thanks.
Well done, Robbie. Bobby Julich, I can tell you, in fact, that he is riding better than ever, and the team are talking about his strength. Of course, they're not going to defend for Jens Voigt because he's not a quality man to take us to the final in Paris. But, you know, there's still a question mark. Will it be Julich or will it be Basso top of the Tour in Paris? 3:30, 3:21 the gap at the moment, as the riders are getting themselves constantly back into the bunch. But I tell you what, Paul, as we swing up towards the mountain, this big peloton is again going to be on the defensive.
They'll be on the defensive. It'll be interesting to see what tactics Armstrong and his team adopt at the bottom of the climb, whether they will try and asphyxiate everybody else in the main field by really putting the hammer down in the first couple of kilometers. They may well have heard rumors that Jan Ullrich is not in great shape, but despite that accident, I'm sure Ullrich is in a bit of pain here this afternoon, but he's the kind of bike rider who is tough enough to recuperate over 2 or 3 days. So if Armstrong can see the chance of pulling back some time on a day like this, that's probably what's in the back of his mind.
So the latest time gap is 3 minutes 15 seconds right now for this breakdown there, just coming in from Radio Tour. So, as the boys from Discovery Channel are keeping a close eye on the riders up front, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we're going to tell you all about Ivan Basso, the challenger. Welcome back. If you look down here from the helicopter at all of the Discovery Channel under orders from Armstrong to chase. This is our Trek aerial view today, brought to you by Trek Lucky 7 Sweepstakes. And the boys are riding on Trek bikes, of course, as they are now chasing down the leaders. At least they hope so. Well, it's time now. I promised you a profile on Ivan Basso. Here it is, thanks to Energizer.
Ivan Basso, the 27-year-old from Italy, leads Team CSC at the Tour. It was last July that Basso put the world on notice that he is a true contender for cycling's biggest prize. In the mountains, Basso proved himself to be the only rider capable of staying on the wheel of Lance Armstrong. He won the vicious stage to La Mongie and finished third overall in Paris, confirming his huge potential. Entering this season, Basso made the bold statement that he would ride to win both the Tour of Italy in May and the Tour de France in July. His performance in Italy started well, but then went terribly wrong when the Giro hit the mountains. A stomach illness weakened him, to the point that he lost any chance of competing for the overall title. He managed to recover and win 2 stages in the final week, but his Tour of Italy had effectively been destroyed. It's possible that his illness in Italy will be a blessing in France. His dismal showing in May could motivate him here in July. Backed by a great team and perhaps the best manager in the sport, Bjarne Riis, Basso can climb with Lance, and his team will be strong when it counts. His one weakness, though, has been his time trialling. This is where Lance Armstrong could gain sufficient time on him. So unlike last year, when Team CSC rode conservatively trying to protect second place, Basso and his teammates will need to attack Lance wherever and whenever he's vulnerable. Otherwise, the script may play out exactly the same way, with Basso finishing on the wrong step of the podium.
There we go, that's the energizing, keep going athlete profile. There's his baseball card, live from Ivan Basso, 154 pounds, good weight to climb. Close since 1998, we saw him ride very well in this year's Tour of Italy, and then he went ill, and he still came back quite strong. Third in last year's Tour de France, and of course a stage winner when he beat Lance Armstrong in the Alps. So the ride is now approaching the base of the climb. The leaders have just started the climb. The main peloton are snapping at the heels. Latest time gap, 2 minutes 55 between the leaders, Lance Armstrong and Jens Voigt in the chase group. Here we are, a chance to look at the leaders. 3, 6, 7 of them now. Sanchez and Facci have both been dropped. So there are only 7 left up front now as they continue the slower slopes of the climb of Courchevel. Boy, they've got a long way to go here, and they've already lost 2 men, and the pressure is on by Oscar Pereiro, and that is no surprise. Pereiro could be climbing himself back into the overall leaderboard of the Tour de France today, and that's why the Discovery Channel boys are chasing. Lance Armstrong has said, go as long as you can and race as hard as you can. We are now on showdown day here on the first day in the Alps. We're on the climb now of Courchevel, and the crowds are big and waiting at the top. We'll take a short break and then we'll show you the action today as the mountains begin to really bite. See you in a moment. We're back with the Tour de France, and the lower slopes of Courchevel is causing a little bit of chaos in the breakaway now. 4 riders survive. Here they are. Oscar Pereiro in second place at the moment, but he's been ripping them up. Jörg Jatsk, Laurent Brochard, Yuri Krivtsov have gone clear of the others. They're the groups now at 10 seconds. Then we go back to the next split at 25, and then the chase number 3. I think we then go back to the peloton containing yellow and blue, Armstrong and Voigt. This is an amazing push now by Pereiro. He's got the lead. Armstrong has tried to chase him down, and the riders now feel as though this is a big danger. We're starting the climb itself now on the lower slopes with Brive-les-Bains just off to the left, the athletes' village in the Winter Olympics of '92. These boys have started with a terrific speed here. Kristoff having a job sitting at the back of them. There is Armstrong's troops, and their job now will be to lead up this mountain as long as possible. Iban Mayo, who got it back into this group, clearly again in trouble sitting at the back. We believe he's got an injured knee or tendonitis. Although he looks as though he's going to sprint round Jens Voigt. He knows Voigt will be in trouble very shortly on this climb. And already this group is beginning to thin out, and the only men doing the chasing are Discovery. So one of the other teams, CSC and T-Mobile, also with promoted favourites on there. And there's trouble here at the back now. Well, this could be, I don't think it's Brochard. No, it's not Brochard. It's a rider at the back here. I think it's Kristoff. It is. Well, that is bad luck. That was Kristoff in the breakaway, and there's his breakaway. Erstwhile companions are past him, so he's gone back to them. Involuntary, what a shame. He was right up there. So that's the action on the climb, and again splitting up now as Yatsk is the next one to be dropped. Well, don't forget the ride of a lifetime. OLN's exclusive coverage of this Tour de France will continue with Stage 11. Now, we've got a terrific day for you tomorrow. We start live with coverage at 6:30 Eastern Time, and we'll follow that with expanded prime time coverage at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific. 5 hours of the Tour de France tomorrow on what we see as a crucial day, but aren't they all for the Tour de France? You're going to see some great pictures, including the climb of the Col de Galibier. No thoughts of that at the moment for Laurent Brochard here, the former world champion who's setting his course fair now up the mountain. Don't forget you can catch OLN's coverage of Stage 11 live as well on the big screen in Times Square if you're living in or near Manhattan, New York. This will start at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you can't be in Times Square, well, drop in during our 5-hour broadcast tomorrow. Check in on the scene and excitement. Get down to Times Square. Cheer on your man, Lance Armstrong. Big for him tomorrow. So the breakaway is now under pressure. And look at this, Paul. Alexander Vinokurov making profit by the pacemaking by Armstrong.
It certainly is. He's moved right up there. He's waiting, I think, for an assault by Armstrong when we get to the early kilometres of this climb. Brochard has been dropped and now is fighting his way back. We mustn't forget, you know, Brochard is a great professional bike rider. He was world champion in '97, but he also won the Criterium International back in 2003. I think this time it's probably the last time that he will see these two riders before the finish line. But in the main field behind, the yellow jersey of Jens Voigt is under a serious amount of pressure, and he's just been left behind a fraction.
Yes, Mayo spotted that and nipped round him on the bike. I thought it was Yatsk in the helicopter, but it was Brochard who was dropped. Yatsk is still there, so it's the same tandem that came up to the original breakaway, have now blown the breakaway away and gone forward. This is a very serious attempt by Oscar Pereiro here to win the day for Phonak, and Armstrong is up for it now. He's spotted us. There's Lance in the last part of our picture, followed by Alexander Vinokurov. That should tell us something as well. Back further down, Jens Voigt. He knows that if he's dropped by much today, he'll see his jersey pass probably over to Christophe Moreau, but we haven't seen Moreau yet. So there's the field splitting up. As our camera races through the remnants of the peloton, which has just started the climb here as one. They're now spread all over the mountain. That's Iban Mayo, clearly in trouble today. He has got a knee problem, dropping away as Armstrong's group is led now up the mountain. Right behind Lance Armstrong, Alexander Vinokurov. Behind Vinokurov, we've got Basso and Ulrich. But they're out to catch the two leaders. They want Oscar Pereiro back.
It's still coming down. It's 2 minutes and 15 seconds. But I tell you what a performance, Phil. There's the French champion, Federico, going off the back. What a performance by the teammates of Lance Armstrong. Team Discovery Channel the other day, people were discounting them, discarding them, saying, what's the problem with Team Discovery Channel? Well, I think today they're answering that question and saying, sorry, mate, there's nothing wrong with us at all. Beltran has done his job for the day. He's moving off the back, but he certainly created a lot of pain for everybody else in this field.
Well, good pace racing by Pereiro, and I'm glad to see him make this sort of a move, because this is going to hurt the riders. Some of them still content to follow Lance Armstrong and not help him in his escapades. They really think he's the man to beat. Pietro Cacchioli going back though, we didn't expect that.
Well, I thought he was a rider who could rival the top end of the overall classification. Again, Sylvain Chavanel going off the back as well, a man regarded as having a great future in 3-week stage racing for France.
This is an amazing scene here as the riders continue to slip away. Wasn't sure whether that was Thomas Lundqvist or Brad McGee. The number didn't look like it was 171. I think it was 177. Anyway, as there's the top, it's still sunny shining, no rain yet. They're on their way to us. We'll take a break.
Keep fit, take exercise, keep fit, and you'll be wise, that's it. Grow twice your size, whatever you do, keep fit, and take the air, don't flit. To your armchair you get, no medals there, whatever you do, keep fit.
First mountaintop finish of the Tour is upon us. 14 miles up to the ski station of Courchevel, a tortuous ascent that will test the will and the strength of every rider in the peloton. Can the T-Mobile boys put the fight to Lance? Is the Texan simply unbeatable? Or is there another contender who will claim the day? One mountain to answer all. The final climb of stage 10 is now on OLN. Yes, and it's the battle for sure today. Much to our surprise, everybody is launching attacks here. Just over 20 kilometers an hour. Oscar Pereiro has been distanced, and can you believe that? Jörg Jatsk has put in a move here that's caught Pereiro off guard. And that is a big surprise. Now, Jörg Jatsk is 5 minutes 20 seconds behind the race leader, who has now been dropped. Jens Voigt has gone from the group. So we are once again looking at Christophe Moreau and Lance Armstrong as the men in charge. Well, I don't know about you, Paul. I'm a bit surprised to see Jatsk dropping Pereiro. Pereiro, I think, a bit too confident, perhaps.
I think Pereira probably put just a little bit too much in on the Valley Road. You know, he's a long way down in the overall classification at the start of the day, Jörg Jatsk. I'm not really certain, Phil, that he's thinking here about moving into the yellow jersey. I think what he's thinking about is trying to get himself the victory in the mountains. He's a great bike rider, and I think he made a sensible decision to come back to Liberty Seguros.
Jörg Jatsk is now in the lead on his own here. 16 kilometers from the summit, 10 miles to climb. Has he gone too soon? Pereiro has been left. Brochard is also in no man's land, so too is Christophe. The rest have been swept up by the group.
He's absolutely flying here. He's picked up the pace. He will try and get himself into his own rhythm, and he's obviously got rather a good gap there because they've got the team cars right in behind him. I wonder what happened to Oscar Pereiro, because he was looking very strong along the valley roads, and right now he's been left behind by Jörg Jatsk. The man in the team car behind him, the second team director of Liberty Seguros this afternoon, is a man that we follow for many, many years in the Tour de France, Herminio Diazabala.
Well, here is the pacemaking being done all of the time and changing occasionally at the front, but it's the same couple of Discovery riders. Just look over the shoulder, though. The boys like Basso sitting at the back. Bobby Julich is there. Other riders just off our camera is Alexander Vinokurov. That group is getting very, very thin now. This is Kritsov coming back. He was in the breakaway. He'll get swept up. That leaves, I think, just 3 riders out in front.
Laurent Brochard currently caught in no man's land. The guys from Team Discovery Channel today have put the race heads on, Phil. If you look at these guys, they've got themselves concentrated on the job in hand. They want to dictate an unbelievable pace. This is the tactic that Armstrong has had for many, many years now.
That's Ulrich.
No, it's Sevilla.
Oh, gee.
Very close. 17 and 11 looks very similar.
I thought it was 11. The 7s are very poor on these numbers. I thought that was number 11.
Well, Oscar Sevilla, when you see a rider bow down like that, it's a sign that he's completely and utterly cracked. There's the race referee bringing the cars slowly but surely forward. It's Christophe's.
Christophe's gone straight through and out. His job done today. And this is Menchov, isn't it?
Yep, this is a bit of a surprise. This is Denny Menchov. He's the leader of Team Rabobank, and he's obviously not having a very good tour here.
No, Menchov slipping away. There he is. And he's been joined by Kritsov, who is also going backwards on this long climb. I don't think they were expecting such a high tempo to be made by Discovery up here. It is destroying the main field at the moment.
A little bit of revenge, I think, for the tempo that was set just a couple of days ago. Zubeldia is going out of the back as well. So big names being taken hostage here by the tempo of Lance Armstrong and, of course, Liberty and his team. Now, this is interesting because also going out of the back is Roberto Heras.
Well, that I would have bet against. He seemed to be riding so well, but the tempo has been too quick for him. Yet this is the man who used to pace Lance Armstrong on mountains like this before Lance was unleashed to win the day. And look at the difference now.
Psychologically, it is for riders like Roberto Heras sometimes much easier to ride and set the tempo for somebody else than to do it for yourself. I thought Roberto Heras was having a fairly nice Tour de France. He's 21st overall, around about 5¼ minutes behind behind Jens Voigt, but only 3 and a bit minutes behind Lance Armstrong. Riders are popping out of the back dramatically now. Mikel Astroloza going backwards there, and Belocchi too is being dropped.
Well, Yoshiba Belocchi again, who's been looking like he was recovering his old form. This tempo has ruined so many riders today on the climb. And still Group Armstrong contains all of the serious contenders. Basso also there, Vinokurov, Ulrich is still there, 15 kilometers to go. Jörg Jatsk is the big surprise of the day. He's come up from the back to lead the race now by himself. It's over a minute back to Brochard. Pereiro is in between, and the yellow jersey a couple of minutes now behind the Armstrong group. And so the peloton at a minute 47, and the yellow jersey now over 2 minutes back.
Well, that man has got the bit between his teeth, but look at that. That is the heads of state now. This looks like a move by Carlos Sastre. Team CSC have got a strategy here to try and panic the boys of Lance Armstrong, and that's why they're going to launch 1 or 2 attacks off. This could be trying to set something up for Ivan Basso.
Well, Basso did say he was going to attack today, or at least Bjarne Riis said that Basso was going to attack today, his manager. But I don't know how he can hold off this tempo, because he can't raise it another 2 kilometers an hour, and they're holding him.
Team Discovery Channel must not panic at a moment like this. They've got to keep in mind that they've got a job to do. They'll allow riders to move off the front like Carlos Sastre has done here. They keep their infernal tempo going, and the rider who attacks just naturally gets pulled back in, reeled back in, like a fisherman with a trout on the end of his line.
They are making no lifting of the pace here. They're just waiting. He looks over, he can hear them coming. He may as well just ease back and save his energy. Try again, maybe. Here comes Brochard back into the fold. He's been out front since 0 kilometers today. They're picking him up. That will leave just Pereiro and Jatsk riding separately up the mountain. The infernal machine of Armstrong is eating up the road, and he's putting himself in with a winning chance here.
He's also putting in Christophe Moreau in with a chance of getting himself the yellow jersey. Stefano Garzelli going out of the back there. Carpets as well in difficulty. I just caught a very quick glimpse of the white jersey there. Also sliding, but everybody is under pressure. Guerini's disappearing here as well.
Again.
And Moreau. Moreau is out.
Well, Moreau is unhitched here. This is Vladimir Karpets, the best rookie of last year and the leader of the white jersey this time. He is also blown away. There is going to be nobody left here, only Team Discovery, a couple of T-Mobiles, and I think Floyd Landis is still in there, and I believe Levi Leipheimer is still here. We need to get into that pack now, because these are becoming a very select bunch of bike riders. There is Christophe Moreau. He will have started today believing he was to be the next Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France. He still has time in hand, but he can't afford to lose much.
Well, he had a 28-second advantage over Lance Armstrong at the start of the day, and he's finding this very difficult indeed. It's a big breaking of his dream there, Phil, because he absolutely believed he was going to be in the yellow jersey at the end of today. I think Team Discovery Channel had something else in mind.
Well, Brochard has gone now. This is Chris Horner here as well, and he's been unhatched with Bobby Julich and Horner going backwards together. This is decision time.
Santiago
Botero in trouble. This is amazing.
We're reading the names off of the major challengers to Lance Armstrong one by one. They are all disappearing. Santiago Botero was the man who dominated the Dauphiné Libéré just 3 weeks before the Tour de France, and Armstrong just sat back and said, the Tour de France is in 3 weeks' time. It's not now.
And it's all being done. Here comes George Hincapie getting into the scene now. He is in second place here. Now, Team Discovery Channel are really taking this race. They're not all here by any means. The face still looks pretty cool on Vinokurov. Ulrich looks deadly determined, and just behind the two of them is Levi Leipheimer, and his folks are waiting on the top. Mum, Dad and brother.
Everybody's waiting at the finish. Jörg Yats now getting into that time trial position of his. You know, back in 1997, this guy was the world military time trial champion. Since then, he's hardly ever won any races, but he's a consistent performer. And, you know, this could be a great victory for him. But I think these guys from the pale blue train of Team Discovery Channel have got something else in mind. There you can just see Alexander Vinokurov moving through. There is Ivan Basso. They are all here this afternoon. Cadel Evans is just at the back there looking comfortable. Floyd Landis. But the pressure is really on, and Carlos Sastre now is the man to pay for his attempt to attack.
He started the move. It certainly caused an acceleration in tempo, which has destroyed a number of riders here. Eddie Mazzolini is the Lamprey rider. Little Leonardo Pipoli is tagged onto the back. Chris Horner, his teammate, has just gone off the back. 44 on the far right is Cadel Evans. Moment of realization for Cadel today. No sign of Michael Rogers, and he's got lots of banners on the road. Levi Leipheimer is in this group, and this is a pack of celebrities back here, including Iban Mayo, and they are losing ground now big time, along with Jens Voigt, the yellow jersey, who'll be out of that today. Well, what an amazing climb this is proving to be now. There's still an awful long way to go as well. The leaders are still there, remember. Levi Leipheimer is there, Lance is still there, Ulrich, Alexander Vinokurov, Basso. That is a select group. These are the men who are hanging on. Can they cause trouble to Lance as we get nearer to the summit? Well, we'll find out when we come back after the break. Basso's looking good. Armstrong, his team is literally destroying the Tour de France on this climb to Courchevel. Alexander Vinokurov has been forced to the back of the group here. It's very, very strange. That's Leonardo Pipoli in front. I am wondering if Vinokurov has put himself in trouble, because he was, in fact, riding right behind Armstrong. All of a sudden, he is at the back. Only one rider is in front, Jörg Yats, the original man. He's a minute ahead of this group, while the Maillot Jaune now is 7 minutes, 38 seconds behind. It's amazing today. We are 12 kilometers from the summit, from the finishing line. One has to ask how many riders will be together at the summit. Jose Acevedo has paced-maked his way, and he's now gone. Only one rider left, Popovic, alongside Armstrong. There goes Hincapie, did an amazing turn at the front. His legs have gone. It is incredible.
But look at him now, Phil. He's done his job for the day. He's put the rest of that group under serious pressure for a number of kilometers. And when the lights go out, when you're a professional bike rider like this, it is unbelievable, because there is no power at all left in the engine room.
But there's still Popovic, despite the fact he fell and hit a car. You see the dirt on his jersey. He came back with a smile there. We thought would be the next leader of the Tour de France in 1:01. Christophe Moreau lying second at the start today. He has not been able to maintain the pace by Armstrong. Armstrong is now the big candidate to go back in yellow tonight, as because Moreau has been left behind, you go back 5 more minutes to find the current leader, Jens Voigt. This has been a systematic destruction of the field of the Tour de France, and the others who call themselves favourites have only been able to follow. It is absolutely amazing. There is Basso, 21. There is Ulrich, number 11. Also here, 31, Mancebo, and Valverde is here. Rasmussen is here. Number 19 is Vinokurov. They can't do anything but follow.
The man who's leading them here, Jaroslav Popovic, has been said by Johan Brunel, who is the team manager of Discovery Channel, is the future of that team. I wonder if this man here is playing a game, Phil. Vinokurov keeps looking down. He keeps looking at his gears. He shouldn't really be sitting in this position. He should be sitting in 4th or 5th position.
This guy is cracking.
He was the man that Armstrong thought was the biggest challenger that he could have in the Tour de France this year. Opening up the jerseys, a sign he's looking for that little bit more oxygen. He's losing the back wheel of this bus, and in fact he's going to have to try and ride around Oscar Pereira. The gap is there. Armstrong will know this immediately, and so will Jaroslav Popovic. I'm sure they'll turn up the ratchet just a little bit more.
Who's the leader of T-Mobile now, Paul? Because this guy is cracked and Ulrich is still there.
And so is Andreas Kloden. The two German riders at the top end of T-Mobile have managed to stay in contact with Lance Armstrong. I'm amazed to see Alexander Vinokurov, but we said, Phil, it is always strange the day after a rest day. It's a horrible thing for a bike rider to have. People think, oh, great, they've had a rest, they've recuperated. The body does very strange things on the rest day. It's taken punishment for 9 days, then all of a sudden you turn off the punishment. It thinks it's all over, and then you've got to do it the next day.
Lance said at the start he would try and lift the pace and see if he could distance some of his rivals. And again, he predicted he would lose his jersey the other day. He did. He predicted he would distance some of his rivals today. He has done so. And he's still got Popovic, the signing of the year, the man who is expected to replace Armstrong as a Tour winner next year, right on the front. And the others are having to hope, and I'm sure that's all they do, is they hope they can match the pace of this tandem.
Well, Popovic, Armstrong coming up alongside Popovic there. He's having a quick chat. You know, in fact, he's asked him to lift it a little bit more. Look at the acceleration now coming from Popovic. They know that everybody's on the rivet.
Lance shouted at him there.
He knows that Alexander Vinokurov is not there. He said, come on, mate, let's go. Let's give it to them.
Well, look at this now. Cadell Evans scrabbling at the back, but strong enough to go forward on the wheel of Medchop there. That's a good move. And this is an incredible acceleration by Popovic. Now he's eased. Armstrong's looking, and this is going to be an attack by Armstrong.
Watch out. That's the discussion. That's the lift up the place. Let's put these guys into the red zone. I'm feeling good. I want to put the hammer down here this afternoon, and he has done. Armstrong now has taken over.
Armstrong is an angry man. You can see it. He never does this. He is sensed. He is in a position to tear them apart, and he's taking over. All right, guys, so you got rid of my team, did you? Now try and get rid of me.
Well, look at this. Jan Ullrich, number 11. Look at that face. He's looking up the road to see what he can see in front of him, and what he can see disappearing is a certain man by the name of Lance Armstrong. There's two riders with Armstrong, though, from Islas Baleares, Alejandro Valverde and Francisco Mancebo.
Well, this is going to be an amazing last couple of kilometres. Meanwhile, he thought he was going to be in yellow. Christophe Moreau, he might still be third or fourth when he gets to the top now. Armstrong has made it quite apparent. The yellow jersey is on its return trip to his camp.
Alejandro Valverde slipping to the back of the group. This is his first attempt at the Tour de France. He is a man, as far as I'm concerned, for the future. Armstrong looking to see who's on his shoulder. Ivan Basso. Armstrong needs to gain 2 minutes and 18 seconds today if he wants to get the yellow jersey, and that is on Jens Voigt. Well, that's already job done. He needs 28 seconds on Christophe Moreau. Well, that's already job done. He's currently yellow jersey on the road.
And Mancebo's just been unhooked at the back as well. He's going to come down. Here we have just in front there is Jan Ullrich and Andrei Keshekin. They are going back now. Remember, too, first three riders to finish get small time bonuses, 20 for the win, 12 and 8. And now it looks as though Floyd Landis also has cracked.
Phil, there's a big difference between being a team helper and being a team leader, and Floyd Landis this afternoon is going to have to learn that. Eddie Mazzolini getting a nice little gear in, and Francisco Mancebo has come to the front, but Cadell Evans has got onto the back of this group.
Cadell Evans is burying himself in pain there. Levi Leipheimer has also been unhitched. There he is in the distance, just a little bit. Mancebo has actually got himself reorganized here and is giving this a shot. A lot of people think this rider can make the top three. What about Michael Rasmussen back there, the youngster who was looking for the King of the Mountains? I think he's looking for a place in Paris.
What about T-Mobile? Where are they now? They were the big team who thought they'd put Armstrong under real serious pressure the other day on the slopes of the road up towards Girardmer. They're not here anymore.
There's none of them here right now. We've got two dangerous riders here, the Mancebo and Valverde. Basso, I still think, is waiting to pounce and might be the winner today. Lance Armstrong is lifting it again. This is Kloden. He has gone by as well as all of the riders. They must be wondering what on earth has happened on this climb.
Well, they were all rubbing their hands over the weekend. There's Yax. Yax has been caught now. Nobody is left now. Nobody is left in front of this group. Armstrong is tapping out a pace which is infernal. Rasmussen looks fairly comfortable. Look at the face of Alejandro Valverde in about fourth place there. He's wondering what is happening to his body.
Do you know what? I'd watch out on Michael Rasmussen. That guy looks so cool. He might well be going for another victory here. What an amazing race this has been now. This is Andreas Kloden in big trouble on the mountain. Carnage is the only way to describe this ascent of Courchevel. Armstrong has lifted the pace yet another notch. He has blown the tour all across the mountain. Andries Kloden has gone. Ulrich has gone. Here he goes again. Thank you. And he took that easily. Basso looks at him and wonders, if only I had your legs, Lance. And Rasmussen is just tucked in. Mancebo, Valverde rather. And that more or less comprises the group.
But there's some guys actually coming back to the tail of this group. I just caught a sign of Levi Leipheimer. He's made a very good comeback, but Armstrong is not asking anyone for help here at all. He's dictating the pace himself as he goes under the banner. Phil, there's still 10 kilometers to go.
Well, how can they hang on? Will Lance blow? There's so many questions to be asked here. Armstrong on the shoulder of Rasmussen. The Devils joined in. That's never a good sign as we race up the mountain. Basso is grimacing, attempting to run the Devil down. Mancebo and Valverde. Levi Leipheimer, I'm just straining here to see if he's got onto the back. I think he has, and if he has, that's a terrific ride by him, inspired by the fact his family are waiting on the summit. There he is, on the back, alongside Cadel Evans. Cadel Evans looking as though he's in a little bit of trouble now. The gap is opening, and Cadel Evans flying the flag for Australia. He's just unhitched.
Well, I think his gear is a little bit too high there, Cadel Evans, but with courage he'll ride himself back into the race. But Levi Leipheimer was definitely in contact on that group. He's going to leap right up the overall classification this evening. He started 16th, and if he stays with this train, he's going to move up into the top 10 very comfortably. Look at Armstrong's face, though. He does not want anybody to help him here this afternoon. He wants to put as much time as possible between himself, Ulrich and Vinokourov.
We go back to 1999 since we've seen this face of Lance Armstrong stamping out the rhythm on a mountain. This is a demonstration, and he's driven on by anger. I'm sure of that after his last 2 days, which looked a little bit shaky, or at least people said they were. He is now still unhitching. Jörg Jatzky's now in trouble. He's taking a good look at Leipheimer. Third and fourth overall are in this group, Armstrong and Michael Rasmussen. They could be first and second by the end of the day. Rasmussen, let me tell you a little story about this guy. He has such a thing about his body weight, he won't carry a water bottle on the way up a mountain. He takes a full one on the descent only. All because he doesn't want the extra weight on his bicycle.
Complete and utter fanatic when it comes to going uphill and going uphill fast. The man who I'm very impressed with, Phil, is in third position there, Alejandro Valverde. I actually had him down to win the stage a couple of days ago on Saturday when we went down into Gérardmer. He got himself fourth. If these guys don't get rid of the guy there just on the right-hand side for Il Baleares, he's going to whack them all in the sprint because he's a great sprinter and a climber.
He's got those two rare attributes. Yes, he can sprint and climb, and he can also do a reasonable time. So Valverde, for our money, is a Tour de France winner in the future. He'll have a tough job with Armstrong, I think, to win this one. But having said that, he's mixing with the elite now in his first Tour de France, and he's quite happy to make the pace as well. Armstrong has said, right, well, this is the final selection, boys. I've done all the work, little stretch to the back, and he's going to the back now to assess just the strength of these riders. The one on your back means you're the team leader. In front is number 21, Basso. In front of him is 31, Mancebo. And 38 is Valverde, but what on earth has happened to number 11, Jan Ulrich?
What's happened to number 11, Jan Ulrich? What's happened to number 14, Andries Kloden? Or what's happened to number 19, Alexander Vinokourov? They are just hoping to survive here and try and limit their losses on this very first big mountain stage. Armstrong didn't stay at the back for very long there. He obviously felt that they didn't have the pressure in their legs to keep it going at the pace that he wants. Acceleration is putting Basso now into a bit of bother.
Well, when you think this is day one here in the Alps, we thought it'd be a little bit of a tranquil day because tomorrow's the big climbs. When we go over the Galibier, further down by about 3/4 of a minute, we're looking now at the face of Jan Ulrich. Clearly in trouble, but will fight to try and limit his losses, that's for sure. Looking at the men who have made a very select group here on the climb. Inside 9 kilometers to go. Armstrong, Basso, Mancebo, Valverde, Rasmussen. These are fast becoming the cream of this year's Tour de France.
They certainly are. They've got rid of Levi Leipheimer over a number of those recent accelerations. Armstrong looks completely and utterly dedicated to the job in hand here this afternoon, but look at the courage there of Alejandro Valverde. He's in the Tour de France here, Phil, for the first time in his career, and he's with the big men. He's with Armstrong, he's with Basso, he's with Rasmussen, who's proving to be a magical climber. Basso actually here looks as if he's having a little bit of a hard time.
I was just thinking, I think Basso is with them rather than them with Basso. He looks as though he could be in a bit of trouble here. Armstrong has just taken a stretch at the back of the group and has gone straight back to the front. It's 53 seconds to Jan Ullrich. It is a massive 10.5 minutes plus to the yellow jersey of Jens Voigt from the leader to into the depths of infinity.
This is the T-Mobile tandem. Jandris Kloden on the front, Jan Ullrich in second place. The big problem with Jan Ullrich, as Armstrong said before the start of the Tour de France, is he uses much too big a gear. Now the big crack.
Mancebo, Basso, gone.
They've cracked, and we haven't yet got to the steepest part of the climb. Armstrong is dictating an unbelievable, infernal pace at the front end of this group, and everybody now is just gasping for breath on his wheel. You know what? A couple of years ago in the Tour, he said to me when he got to the finish of one of these mountain passes, mate, I was only at 80%. This year at the Tour de France, Phil, he has to hold nothing back because he retires at the end of it.
Well, he only came here to enjoy himself, didn't he? That's what he told us, but he wasn't coming here to lose the Tour de France. He made that very clear. Well, there's still an awful long way to go. Let's not start calling him the Tour de France winner. But again, what do these riders think of Armstrong? When they're with him 1 minute, and he's gone the next.
Well, Eddie Merckx was quite prolific this morning when he said in the local press that Armstrong spoke to him 7 weeks ago, and the way Armstrong was talking, he wasn't coming to this Tour de France to finish second or third. He was coming to race this event.
Well, there's no one in doubt now. This is Courchevel, but his Courchevel is in 3 villages on the mountain. We're going right through them all and out into the open spaces by the airport at the top. Armstrong looks over his shoulder. He assesses the boys. How much are they hurting? He'll get a good look at them, and then he'll try them again. Ullrich has now dropped back to 1:05. The Maillot Jaune group over 11 minutes. Mancebo, who looked to be so good, is now looking as though it's hurting. And it still gets steeper yet.
It still gets steeper, but you know, with Francisco Mancebo, he always looks as if he's hurting, but he's such a difficult bike rider to get rid of. I'm over-impressed with number 38 there, Alejandro Valverde, who to me is definitely going to be a star of the future. He's won 5 races so far this year, but you know, he almost won himself Paris-Nice, where he finished second overall. He won the final stage as well on the Promenade des Anglais.
There's no doubt Valverde is a star of the future. To survive this long in company now like this, with Armstrong clearly firing well, he's just demonstrating he could be a winner next year of the Tour de France. Maybe even this year, but the gaps are opening as Basso has now lost 15 seconds on this group. And, you know, that could go out to 45 or a minute because of this speed.
Well, they need to actually start to combine their efforts here. Armstrong is very worried about the fact that he feels as if he's dragging these guys up the mountain. Keeps going to the back of the group. He'd be happy to know he's got 65 seconds advantage over Jan Ullrich and Andreas Kloden. But I think this afternoon he's thinking more seriously, Phil, about trying to win himself the stage. He's not going to give any presents out in this year's Tour de France.
The 2 boys in pink, 2nd and 4th in last year's Tour de France. Basso, who was 3rd, is just ahead of them. The man who won it is still banging out the message here, and he's got good help now.
Phil, look at that face on Armstrong. It's a face that is totally concentrated. It's a face that has got to do a job in hand here this afternoon. It's great to see Valverde. He's not scared of the company he's with. The man on the front there from Il Baleares has come forward. He's setting a fair amount of tempo for Armstrong. That man won't be long away from winning himself a stage in the Tour de France.
There we are, the 2 boys who finished 2nd, number 14, 4th, number 11. So I think that might be Basso coming down ahead of them there as they continue the tempo. This is Christophe Moreau. Any thoughts of a yellow jersey now? I've gone over the top of the Alps, I think, today. He's lost far too much time. And we're being left with 4 incredible cyclists at the front, including Alejandro Valverde, because he is just 25 years of age, Valverde. This is the yellow jersey. We've gone down the mountain here more than 12 minutes to locate Jens Voigt. Blown to the world now. He could be 20 minutes down by the end. those legs of these three riders have exploded.
They're completely exploded. Jens Voigt actually said, Phil, after that long breakaway of his a couple of days ago, he said, I'm going to have to pay for this breakaway, and I think today he is seriously paying. 1 minute and 13 seconds now is the time from Lance Armstrong back to Jan Ullrich. Just at the back of the group, Alejandro Valverde. If they don't get rid of him, I've got a feeling Valverde is going to be the man to take out the stage, but we've still got a long way to go and some very steep portions of this climb before we get up to the 2,000-meter level.
Well, Moreau at the moment is riding at 1:48. He is still the race leader on the road of this year's Tour de France. Armstrong is still going to get a little bit more time. And actually, maybe not now, because he wasn't that far ahead of Lance. No, I correct that. Lance is now the leader on the road. That's
Armstrong
right.
is the virtual yellow jersey on the road. He started the day with a 28-second deficit on Christophe Moreau. Well, that has been blown out of the water. He started the day with a 2-minute 18 deficit on Jens Voigt. Well, that's around about 20 minutes by the time they get to the finish line. Rasmussen looks fabulous there on the left-hand side in the polka dot jersey. And there's a little bit of an acceleration coming here from Francisco Mancebo.
Mancebo, I'm not sure where he's finding his strength from now. He looks as though he's dead on the wheels, and yet he's still lifting the pace here. He's put Armstrong on the back. He's just watching them, all of them now.
But that's his style. That's his position on the bike. He always looks like that. He never looks comfortable. He's got his arms splayed out. He never looks as if he's part of the machine. He looks to be battling with machine all the time. But this guy is a guy who's managed to win the white jersey in the Tour de France on a previous occasion. He knows exactly what it's all about. Today, he knows that they can move him and Alejandro Valverde well up in the overall classification.
Well, Mancebo has shown himself to be a great bike rider today. This is his 7th Tour de France. Last year, he finished 6th, which was his best ever finish. The year he was best rookie came in the year 2000 when he finished in 9th place. And there were those who thought this man could make the final step forward to a top 3 finish in Paris. And I think, you know, you're going to have to believe those people now, because this is a superb ride by Mancebo. Christophe Moreau still fights on. He might come across some of the bigger names who are falling back towards him, but not yet. There's Botero who's got behind him now.
Well, Santiago Botero, 2 weeks ago in the Dauphiné Libre, looked like a man who was seriously going to challenge Lance Armstrong. Ullrich is at 1 minute and 20 seconds. Christophe Moreau is at 1 minute and 48 seconds. But Jens Voigt is at around about 20 minutes.
Well, he's now 13, I think, Jens Voigt at the moment. And he's going to lose further time now. His day is done. He'll live to fight another day after the mountains, I think. No yellow for him now. We are looking at the elite 4 men here, the 3 Musketeers plus 1. And we have Lance Armstrong in 3rd place. The teammates from Elis Balearis, never have they had 2 guys at the front of a mountain stage before like this. Alessandro Valverde being paced here by Mancebo, tagged at the back. Michael Rasmussen. We are now at 5 kilometers to go.
A little bit mean, that criticism of Il Baleares, because if you remember, they were Banesto, and they had a man by the name of Miguel Indurain a few years ago.
2 of them at the front.
They had many occasions, they had 2 or 3 riders at the front of the races. They were a great climbing team in the 1980s and 1990s, but since then, they've battled to get to the top of the sport. And I think Mancebo realizes how good Alejandro Valverde is.
Look at the face here of Jan Ullrich here. Whatever you say about Jan, he does fight to try and stay in the game, and he's fighting it over 1 minute now. Mancebo, I would say, is making the pace here for Valverde and will soon fall away, in the hope that Valverde will finish it off for what would be an incredible victory today. Armstrong may have something to say about that, and I think also Rasmussen, the king of the mountains. He's scoring big points now in 4th, but I think he'll go for the win.
Well, Armstrong has got to be very careful about Rasmussen, because there's the bonuses on the finish line, and Armstrong and Rasmussen are only separated by around about 25 seconds. So Armstrong will have to pay very much attention to the position of Rasmussen when it comes down to the end. And let's not forget, Rasmussen is at the end of today's stage going to be in 2nd place overall, and the Danish commentators must be going absolutely ballistic.
Well, he rode his first Tour last year and he finished 14th. Like Armstrong, he's hardly been seen in a bicycle race this year, Rasmussen. He actually is married to a Mexican, who's having a baby. They live in Italy. He's been to Mexico. His team let him go. Didn't care whether he raced or not. They had enough faith in him to say, as long as you're ready for the Tour. And he is. 1:28 now to Ulrich. 14 minutes plus to the Maillot Jaune. Armstrong warning of something in the road there as he makes a tight turn. This is an incredible acceleration again. This is the top village now before we break out into open space.
Armstrong is actually just showing them a way around the corners. He knows every inch of the big mountains of the Tour de France. He rode this climb just about 2 weeks ago before the start of the Tour de France, and he said he'd actually forgotten exactly how long it was. This is an infernal climb at 22 kilometers in length. And this man today is stamping his authority on the Tour de France.
Waiting for an attack here. Floyd Landis is now at 1:15 at the 5 kilometers to go banner. These are the two boys in pink from T-Mobile. Look at the face of Ulrich here. I'm just again surprised that Cloden can even work with him. But he seems to be doing all of the work of these two.
He's doing a lot of work. He keeps moving forward. Francisco Mancebo realizes that if he can keep this group together, it's going to be very difficult for Lance Armstrong and Rasmussen to beat that man on the back there, number 38, Alejandro Valverde, just 25 years of age. But, you know, he is a magnificent professional. Last year, he was 3rd overall in the Vuelta a España, but this year they've held him back a fraction, and they wanted to bring him here to the Tour de France. They believe that sometime in the future, that man can take the victory to Spain.
15 minutes on the Maillot Jaune, and he was with them at the start of this climb. He is now 15 minutes behind Jens Voigt as Lance Armstrong is looking to climb into his next yellow jersey in the Tour de France. It'll be number 72, and this is amazing. I have to say that Rasmussen looks simply great. And I think that guy's probably right. We are looking at Superman.
We are looking at Superman here. Rasmussen, though, is turning out to be pretty much of a Superman also. He has recovered admirably from that very long breakaway he put in a couple of days ago, the day before the rest day on the way into Mulhouse. And he's not scared at all of coming forward and helping out Armstrong and Francisco Mancebo to do the pacemaking. Look at Ulrich's face, though. Let's not forget, don't take too much away from Jan Ullrich because he had a very nasty crash, and I think they've probably hidden a few of the informations away from us as to how bad that crash was.
Maybe, and he also crashed, don't forget, before the time trial, so he's had a bit of a rough ride so far, but look at this now. Armstrong and the American flag, while the two riders from Spain are setting the pace. Rasmussen, Team Rabobank have never had a contender for victory in the Tour, ever. They've got a man now in this young rider. Well, he's not young, he's 31, but he was world champion mountain biker before he came across here. As they continue, the 4 riders are clear. They're inside 3, looking for 2. And it's almost a kilometre back to Jan Ullrich now, never mind the rest of the Tour field.
Well, Armstrong again, every time he feels that pace coming down, he goes straight back to the front to set the tempo. These are the 2 guys who thought they were going to play the tactical moves on Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France this year. Andreas Cloden and Jan Ullrich. But today they've been put very much on the defensive, as has Alexander Vinokourov, who is completely and utterly popped.
Armstrong has gone back to the front now. It's all a demonstration now. I don't know which one is thinking of the win, but they all know they're gaining time on all of their rivals. How much energy are they giving away with this week, such a mountainous week? A couple of days more in the Pyrenees, a flat transitional stage, then in the Alps rather, a flat transitional stage, then a couple of days in the Pyrenees. This is one tough week to throw all this energy into one day of racing. 2.5 kilometers to go. They're almost getting ready for the sprint here. Nobody wants to rush through at all.
1 minute and 41 seconds is the time back to Jan Ullrich, and 15.5 minutes back to the yellow jersey. Armstrong just putting his zipper up there in the front of his jersey. I wonder if he's trying to figure out now, Phil, how he is going to beat Alejandro Valverde, because Valverde has got one of the most explosive sprints when it comes to the top of a mountain pass like this.
I can't see anybody beating him in the sprint, Paul, but I'll put nothing past Lance Armstrong anymore. This guy, if he's full of determination, will even go for the win.
Remember how he beat Andreas Cloden last year when we went into the Grand Bornand? Once he gets the bit between the teeth, he wants to do something special. He will probably want to prove something to the team here this afternoon. They've done a great job for him. They raced along all of the valley roads to set this up. I don't think he wants to finish second.
Inside the 2 kilometer mark now. The young and the old, because Valverde a possible winner of the Tour de France from next year onwards in this for the first time to get a good feel alongside the champion Lance Armstrong. That's Valverde's second wheel, puffing and blowing. These boys are at the limit, but they're all at the same limit, and I don't think anybody else has got much more. Mancebo, hats off, that's my big surprise. He has struggled, yet he has held the position on the far right. They're riding these gears now. They're almost getting ready for the sprint down there as they race up towards us. Very shortly now, they're going to see 1 kilometre to go. Somebody's got to try and go. I just don't see these four coming home together.
I can't believe that somebody won't try an attack on the run in towards the finish. Mancebo dropping back into 4th position there. It's a strange style of his, but he's still managing to stay in contact with the first 4 riders of this year's Tour de France. Armstrong's face, since he's set this pace, has never changed. It's been one of concentration. It's all one of internal pressurizing himself.
Well, if tactics play a part, Mancebo will be the first rider to attack. He'll probably go as he approaches the kilometre in the hope he can draw the sting out of Armstrong and Rasmussen and deliver Valverde to the line. Let's see if it happens. He's number 31. He's the small rider at the back. If he's got the legs, of course, how they've just ripped up this mountain. They have put over a quarter of an hour into the yellow jersey in something like 14 kilometres.
And what's amazing, looking at the way Michael Rasmussen is riding here, Phil, he actually told the Danish television the other day that he wasn't really interested in trying to ride for a high place in the overall classification. All he wanted was to win the King of the Mountains. But you know what? If he keeps accompanying Armstrong and the leaders of the race, he cannot be outside the top 10. He's always going to be there.
The day's pain is almost over here, and Armstrong with his fast cadence, a flick of the arm saying, give me a hand. Nobody willing. He looks over saying, come on, give me a hand. They all look over. Nobody wants to give anybody a hand. They are at the limits, but they're all thinking of winning the stage now. They forced Rasmussen, probably the least experienced, and I think Mancebo will try to go off the back if he can. I'm not sure they can lift the speed anymore.
Oh, it's steep in the corner here. As they go around the inside of that bend, they'll go into this tunnel, and once they come out of the tunnel, they'll see that, and that is the banner that indicates 1 kilometre. On the flat stages, that's 60 seconds. Here, it's going to be about 2.5 minutes.
Here comes the flotilla of motorbikes. They have witnessed an extraordinary stage of the Tour de France today, and Armstrong racing into retirement and delivering as much pain as he ever did since 1999. Only 3 riders have desisted everything here, and now it is 2 from the same team. Surely when you've got 2 from the same team, you win the day.
They should not be beaten, but I think they have to bear in mind this is Lance Armstrong's final Tour de France. He's got himself 2 minutes advantage over Jan Ullrich. I think he would like to finish this off with the victory of the stage. Team Il Baleares have got to try and do something rather special if they can, and I would like to see number 31 then moving to the front to set up the pace for Alejandro Valverde. But watch Rasmussen. Rasmussen's going.
Well, that will cause a reaction now. It's still a long way out for the hill, but Michael Rasmussen, who's won 1 stage already when we went to the rest day, is trying again to take this one. They're right on him, and Valverde is on him first. He's the sprinter of the group. Very few climbers can sprint. He can. And another attack here by Rasmussen. This is the serious one this time. No, it's not. Valverde is still waiting. Armstrong watches.
A little bit of an experience there for Rasmussen, going too far out. You don't sprint at 750 metres to the line in a mountain top finish at the Tour de France. Valverde, though, very nervous. Straight onto the wheel. He was waiting for the move. Watch out for a burst from number 31, Mancebo. Armstrong currently, Phil, is in an ideal position. He's looking at everyone. He'll be looking at the muscle fibers of the guys in front of him. If he sees them twitch, he's ready to pounce.
An ideal position to lose, I think, because they've got him pinned up against the barriers, but he's soon opened the door and he's gone. Quick reaction from Valverde. He's got to try and get it, but when Lance is angry, not many people get by him. Armstrong is racing to a victory, and look at the speed of that man. Can Valverde get on? I very much doubt it. Armstrong and Valverde are going to get separate times from the rest because they've raced clear of the field here. Now he's leading out, and Valverde is poised, and I think he's going to take him because he's checking where the others are before he makes a move. Lance Armstrong is determined to stamp his mark. He is the next yellow jersey. I don't think he's going to win the stage.
I'm not sure. Look at Valverde. He's in an ideal position. He's hurting, but he's got the explosive legs of a sprinter.
and it's coming now. Valverde is looking for the win. Armstrong has seconded that. He's given up. Alessandro Valverde wins an incredible stage. Lance Armstrong, same time. The rest all get separate times. What an amazing race. Armstrong back in yellow. Valverde looks like being the new man on the block.
Well, it is also important for Armstrong to put a little bit of time between himself and Michael Rasmussen, and Ivan Basso was the man expecting to accompany Armstrong in the mountains, just as he did last year. Well, he was put under serious pressure this afternoon. He has survived. He's managed to limit his losses a fraction, but he's still going to be around about 45 seconds when he crosses the line. There is Armstrong, a moment to recover. He did what he had to do here this afternoon. He laid down the law.
And still, look, the favourites are finishing. The clock is counting. This is Ivan Basso, who said he was going to attack today. Well, he's got to stay there now as the clock counts out. Almost a minute behind. It will be a minute behind. Jan Ullrich will be more than 2 minutes behind on the day. The yellow jersey will be half an hour behind when he gets up here. 1 minute exactly for Basso. That was Lance Armstrong. And here comes Levi Leipheimer. That was Lance's 22nd stage victory. And it could be the foundation of a Tour victory again. Levi did a great ride. 1:14 back and he's right up amongst it.
Levi rode very high up in the overall classification, and you know Armstrong was very close to the stage victory there. He was looking for that 22nd stage victory, but I think more importantly he was looking to put time over himself and everybody else in the race, and that, I have to say, has been a great success.
Well, they're going to be coming up here for ages now, and the yellow jersey with them at the bottom, probably going to be 17.5 at the last time check. He'll be 20 now. As Jörg Jatsk, who thought he might have had this stage won at the bottom of Courchevel. Ulrich has caught him now. So too Floyd Landis, Leonardo Pipoli, Cadel Evans. These are the boys in this group as they race to the line. Very select group, but look at the clock. That's what tells us the story today. Jatsk, I take my hat off, he's had a great ride, but Lance and Valverde have overshadowed everybody. It's a cruel finish, you see. It's even a little hill right to the line. Cadel Evans riding well today and giving us hope for the future. Eddie Mazzolini takes it at 2:15 on the line. Oh my goodness me. Well, what do you say about a performance like that? Santiago Botero is coming up, number 2 on the Phonak squad. 2.5 minutes already gone. The general classification tonight is going to be an incredible read for us all. And really, Lance Armstrong has beaten his rivals today. You remember when he did this a few years ago in Otakam, when he won on his own. He caught Javier Ochoa before the summit, distanced all his rivals, went on to win that Tour in '99. The Texan is back in business. What an incredible ride. We will completely fill you in with everything when we get back. This is a day to remember. We'll take a break. On this day of mass destruction by the Terminator, in this case Lance Armstrong, look at this. Already 5 minutes has gone by as Alexander Vinokurov arrives at the line with Bobby Julich. Well, that is an amazing destruction of the man that we thought Lance Armstrong really did fear. But I'll tell you what, poor old Jens is still an awful long way to climb. We no longer seem to have a clock on Jens Voigt down the mountain, Paul, but I would say 25 minutes now to this man.
It's going to be a lot, you know. He's paying for that effort. That was a phenomenal performance he put in on the road to Mulhouse. I mean, it was a breakaway of almost 167 kilometers, and one day or another you've got to give that energy back. A lot more riders still to come in, and riders will be scattered all over the main field. It's going to be a very complicated rearranging of the overall classification tonight. We'll have to wait a while before we figure out who is going to sit where.
Well, the white jersey's in here, 4 riders down, of Vladimir Karpich, who was the highest placed rookie. He might still be when all is revealed, but he's 6 minutes down. Valverde, is he in the score? I'm not sure where Popovic is at the moment. Not sure whether he's in or out.
Popovic just came in a few moments ago. It'll be a big toss-up between Valverde.
There's only a second between them, I think, so he could be in. Popovic could have gone back in the white here. Well, there's the results now. So as we're looking here across Courchevel, The man is in himself. A win for Valverde. I think we can now show you our Pacific Life stage results. They're going to take some swallowing by some of the riders. There they are. Alejandro Valverde spoiling Lance Armstrong's 22nd stage win by beating him in the sprint, same time. Michael Rasmussen lost 9 seconds in the sprint. So too did Francisco Mancebo. Ivan Basso lost 62 seconds. That was what Vinokurov was once behind Armstrong in the overall classification. Levi Leipheimer rose to the occasion, finishing 6th. Eddie Mazzolini beat the sprint from the next group, which was at 2:14. Cadel Evans in 8th, Cloden in 9th. Kashikin in 10th, also in this group, was indeed Jan Ulrich. There he is in 13th. Floyd Landers taking 11th. They all finished together at 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Santiago Botero at 2:50. So I guess Floyd Landis will now be seen as the leader of the Phonak team. Look at this, Christophe Moreau, he only got 16th, and Chris Horner got 20th at 3:59. And that 19th place by Jaroslav Popovic will probably see him reclaim the white rookie leader's jersey. There's the winner. He's got to feel happy with himself. It's his first Tour de France. He has now won a stage, and what a stage to win, getting the better of Lance Armstrong in the sprint, finishing in the same time as him, the only rider to do that. He's right up in the overall classifications now. Let's have a look where he's come up to. This is the general classification from Foster's. Armstrong back in yellow for the 72nd yellow jersey of his career. Rasmussen is now in second place, 38 seconds back. Ivan Basso third, but at 2 minutes 40. Christophe Moreau fourth, and Valverde comes in. Top 5 for him now, 3 minutes and 16 seconds behind Armstrong. Bit of work to be done. Leipheimer is up to 6th. Mancebo 7th. Ulrich is 8th. Cloden still top 10. Landis completes the top 10 with a 4:16 deficit on his old teammate Lance Armstrong. Those are huge gaps on the first mountain day of the Tour de France in what we call the high mountains here, the Alps. And there's still 2 more days in the Alps before we go for 3 days in the Pyrenees. These gaps already enormous. And what are the riders going to think tonight when they go home to dinner and talk about this, the ride of Lance Armstrong? When Lance looked over his shoulder there, he knew he'd lost the race, but he stayed close enough so as not to lose any time. That's why Lance stays a step ahead. He watches everything. Nice of him to congratulate Valverde, because that was one terrific sprint by Alejandro Valverde. 9 minutes 50 has passed by, Paul. We've got a new race leader in yellow. We've got a new race leader in white. We're now hoping the others get in. Heras is just about coming in.
10 minutes.
10 minutes down.
It's amazing to see that Roberto Heras has crossed the line almost 10 minutes in arrears of the 2 leaders, Alejandro Valverde and Lance Armstrong. And this is the rest of the blue train coming in as well. Job done at the bottom of the climb. You can just see there Georgi Hincapie coming in, and what a job of work George Hincapie did when he crossed the line. And Jose Acevedo. These are the guys that work like Trojans along the Valley Road to set this climb up for Lance Armstrong here this afternoon. When Armstrong looks down at the overall classification, I think he's going to be a fairly happy man. Well, that's where we came up from. That is an unbelievable climb.
Well, as we look across the Pine Woods here, of course, let me remind you what's happening tonight at 11 o'clock after our prime time show. It'll be Fearless, Peekaboo Street, the fairy tale story of a self-described dirtbag from the tiny mountain town of Triumph, Idaho, who made it all the way to Olympic glory, winning a silver medal in Lillehammer, Norway in 1994. She went on to take gold in Nagano, Japan in 1998. That's Fearless tonight at 11 after our prime time coverage of the Tour de France. Well, we are still waiting to talk to Lance Armstrong, and we will. He has turned in one incredible performance. We'll give him a couple of minutes to just towel down before he gets in touch with our Craig Hummer. So we'll take a break, rejoin us, and I wonder what he's got to say. It'll be good, whatever it is. See you in a moment. Welcome back. These are the slopes of Courchevel. It's a long way to the bottom. It's a long way to the top. And the man who has flown up to the top today, Alessandro Valverde, but the man that destroyed the field, the team of Lance Armstrong halfway up, Armstrong himself for the rest of the ride. The others followed, helped occasionally, and on the line, Valverde got the sprint and is now up into the top 5 in the Tour de France. while, of course, Armstrong is in yellow. Well, let's go down. We've got Michael Rasmussen now, and I think he's probably with Frankie Andre. I'm not sure.
Michael, tell me about just the pace of that final few kilometers in the climb. You, of course, one of the few people able to stay with Lance and the rest of the Discovery Channel team.
Well, they set an incredible pace from the bottom of the climb, and well, luckily they got tired at the same time, all of them, and eventually Lance was by himself. But him and Valverde, they were incredibly strong today, and well, it was impossible to get rid of them in the end.
Well, you're not doing too bad yourself, as you know. One of the best tours you've certainly we've seen in a long time. Talk about what this tour means to you and how great you felt so far in the tour.
Well, it's beyond all expectations. I came here with hopes for the mountain jersey and to pick up a stage win. Now I already got the jersey and the stage win, and I can try to, well, maybe focus on the general classification.
It looked as though you, as well as the other guys that were there at the end, had your legs, especially after the rest day. Looking forward to tomorrow, another very tough stage. What do you think?
Well, today the race started really right now. This is the first time we've gone head-to-head, all the strongest guys, and now we can start doing the math, right? And because until today we didn't know like who were going fast and who were not.
All right. Well, congratulations. You're definitely in the mix.
Thanks a lot.
Well, as we now go down to the stage, down to the podium here, and this is the first of the presentation. Alejandro Valverde today, the only man to hang on to Lance Armstrong, finishing in the same time as him, and then finding the legs to beat him in the end.
Well, he's won 3 stages in the Vuelta, finished 3rd overall, but this victory, I think, here this afternoon, Phil, he will remember for an awful long time, because he was in with the big battle at the end of the stage with Lance Armstrong and with his own teammates, and he was able to match Armstrong almost pedal stroke for pedal stroke.
It's his 6th win this season, his 31st of his career, which only began in 2002. He really is a star of the future at 25 years of age, just. So he is really on form. So I think we've now got Lance Armstrong. Oh no, we've got him, but we're going to take a break first, so we'll give him that little extra time. So as we watch Alejandro Valverde win the day, we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. That's where we are situated in the car park now. That's where all the Tour de France is steadily arriving from up the mountain. The yellow jersey is still to come in, and it's 19 minutes since Lance Armstrong and Valverde crossed the line. That should be time enough to get Lance back in order. He's now speaking with Craig Hummer.
Lance, a couple days ago, it was Alexander Vinokourov who poked and prodded the peloton with his attacks. Today, you took over that role. Is it safe to say you had your climbing legs?
I think it's safe to say that the team had their climbing legs, and you saw a great Discovery team, and for a team that was basically written off 2, 3, 4 days ago, they came back hard and strong, and they inspired me today. And you know, hearing on the radio from Johan that Vino's in trouble and Jan's in trouble, it helps the guys, it helps me, and so we needed to take time when we could, and today was that day.
As you are shredding the legs off of some of the best riders in the world, how much of an adrenaline boost is that for you when Johan gets on and tells you Ulrich's dropping back, Vino's dropping back?
Yeah, you have to be careful, because you know that you have 3 or 4 guys with you still, and you know you can get all charged up and start flying through a steep section, but you know if you've got 10K to go and it gets high, you get up here near 2,000 meters. You know, these guys aren't pancakes you're riding with. You have to respect them and know that it's a lot easier to sit on than it is to pull. So I was trying to be conservative, yet go as hard as I could and take time out of my rivals.
All right, well, you and everyone else has said the tour starts today. We'll see you tomorrow.
A lot of racing to go. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Lance. Thanks to Craig. But there is a lot of racing tomorrow. But how many people have got the legs to race tomorrow after what happened today? These 4 riders were the selection. Armstrong was the man dictating the pace. Once he felt Paul, he'd got the final selection. He sort of took a little bit of time out. But then he opened the sprint. He wanted the win.
He wanted to win, but I tell you what, the man who came up to his wheel, Alejandro Valverde, is a man who has the ability not only to climb, but sprint with the best.
Big win for Valverde, and we look now on the podium at Lance Armstrong. his 72nd yellow jersey. It looks as though he will catch up with Bernard Hinault and become the #2 top man of wearers of the yellow jersey. He's only got a few more days to go in yellow to do that now. This is a very satisfying achievement after those 2 days of a sort of a scare he gave everybody, and he gave the field a rather false confidence.
Well, Eddie Merckx said the same thing. You know, everybody can have a bad day in the Tour de France, but never write off a champion like Lance Armstrong or a team like Team Discovery Channel, because on paper, at the end of the day, they still look to me like the strongest team that they have ever fielded. Here are one or two of the stragglers coming in. Over to the right-hand side, you can see the Spanish national champion, Juan Manuel Garate, and in that group as well is a Benjamin Noval.
But no sign of the yellow jersey at the start of the day, and they're 22 minutes behind. So it's going to be a half hour, I think, at least for poor old Jens Voigt. Well, don't forget, tonight at 11, after our prime time show, we'll bring you another extraordinary athlete too in our program, Fearless. And we're going to talk about Peekaboo Street, the fairy tale story of a self-described dirtbag from the tiny little town of Triumph, Idaho. She made it all the way to Olympic glory with a silver in Lillehammer in '94, a gold in Nagano, Japan in '98.
She certainly did. And looking down here at the ski jumps, these were the ski jumps from the Olympic Games of Albertville back in 1992. But I tell you one thing, Armstrong today, Phil, was imperial.
Well, Paul Sherwen tipped Armstrong to win. He was wrong, of course. He only got second place. When we come back after the break, though, we'll bring in Alan Bob. Boy, what a day. We'll see you in a moment. Welcome back. That's the airstrip here at 2,000 meters above sea level here at Courchevel. And that's where we've just finished an amazing stage of the Tour de France. We have seen plenty of amazing stages in this race since Lance started winning back in 1999. But this is going to be one of the most sensational. There's the melee around the top men of the day. Armstrong, and indeed down there also Alessandro Valverde. Well, what a day it's been. Just one moment. 25 minutes has gone by now. Still no sign of poor Jens Voigt.
No sign of Jens Voigt, but it was good to see that he managed to hold the yellow jersey through the early part over the first climb of the day. But what a day by Lance Armstrong. And as Lance Armstrong himself said, what a day for Team Discovery Channel.
It all started at the bottom of the climb. Jens Voigt had been dropped and got back on the previous one. This time he was on his way out of sight and out of mind. At the other end of the field, of course, it was Discovery Channel who worked and worked till one by one they dropped away. Then they were left with just Jaroslav Popovic. They had a little talk, and then he was said to Jaroslav Popovic, lift the pace so you can go no quicker. And then came the attack by Armstrong that took away a very select group.
He could see, and I think he could feel at that moment that there were a lot of riders in that group were under a serious amount of pressure. The two most dangerous men to him, Jan Ullrich and Alexander Vinokourov, were very rapidly dispatched. Armstrong, to begin with, never even looked back, but he did the damage that he wanted to number 19 Vinokourov, and a little bit further up the climb to Jan Ullrich as well.
So Vinokourov, we thought was going to be a challenger. He's now been unhitched, as well as Christophe Murrow. He was another rider who thought he might get yellow today. Instead, he got nothing at all because he was left behind. This was an elimination of many of the big names of the Tour de France, and I'm not sure they can even come back. Floyd Landis in the Phonak squad looked to be going great. Suddenly the legs turned to rubber and he lost contact.
Andries Vloden too, the man who was tipped as the enigmatic performer, second overall in the Tour de France last year. This year, he had to relegate himself to a helper, to Jan Ullrich, because Ullrich, despite that nasty crash a couple of days ago, was put into serious problems on the first big alpine climb of this year's Tour.
You name them, we can dispatch them. Also, Ivan Basso went back as well when he was supposed to have attacked. He couldn't master the pace towards the end of the climb. These boys are going to go back and assess tonight around dinner. 4 were left. That was all. All that was left was for Armstrong to win. It wasn't to be because Alessandro Valverde, somewhere in his first Tour de France, dug deep into those legs and found the strength to go over the top of Lance. And Lance was the first guy to congratulate him.
Well, Armstrong knew the finish of this climb to absolute perfection. He knew he was going to hold the line going through the inside. At the end of the day, he did want to win that stage, but I think probably the most important thing for him, Phil, was getting time on every everybody else.
Well, we're still waiting here for the finish of the Maillot Jaune of the day. 28 minutes is now ticked by. There is a massive crowd out on the finishing line waiting to see Jens Voigt come in. The odd pictures we see of him out on the course. He's been actively encouraged by other riders in the race now. He has so literally hit the wall. He really did try to live up to the reputation of the Maillot Jaune.
He certainly did, but I think Jens is a professional rider enough to know that he was not going to keep the yellow jersey. We're still waiting for Jens. That's Peter Weening on the left-hand side. He won the stage into Gerardmer a couple of days ago. He's learning a lot about the Tour de France, but look at the finish clock there, Phil. 28 minutes and 40 seconds. It's going to be the half-hour mark for Jens Voigt.
There's the vultures, the press with the cameras, waiting to get the shot of Jens Voigt coming in. He should be okay because there's a lot of riders still to come in, but I would think today we might see our first eliminations from the Tour, because remember, all of the sprinters are way behind yet, and in that group we've got Tom Bonan, Robbie McEwen, Thor Hushoff. They're all still to come in, and they're in quite a big bunch.
They're in quite a big bunch. I would calculate the elimination time today to be around about 48 minutes, because again, it was a very fast mountain stage, and the faster you go on the mountain stages, the bigger time gap you have at the end to get inside that elimination time, and it's a horrible thing. It's like an invisible banner just going down across the road, and sometimes on a couple of occasions when I was racing, I just managed to nip underneath it.
Well, what happens here is when the elimination time passes by, the clock just goes black, and if you're 10 feet from it and it's gone black, that you're out of the race. Believe me, there's nobody gets back in.
Nobody gets back in unless, of course, you've had some mechanical incident out on the course and the judges might feel a little bit sympathetic. That happens on occasions, but not very often. It happened to me once, but hopefully we won't see too many riders get eliminated today, because it was a very tough stage, very fast, so I think most guys should get in at the end of the day.
All right, well, 30 minutes has now passed by, still no signs of Jens Voigt. We're going to have one more segment with you. Enjoy the end of our coverage of this most extraordinary day in the Tour de France. When we come back, we'll be with Alan Bob, and let's hope Jens Voigt gets in. See you in a moment.
Our network is out of control.
It's all these servers. I need more people.
I think we should buy more servers.
But that's the problem. Too many servers.
The servers are our friends. They want to serve us.
He's lost it.
What do we do?
We're switching over to IBM servers. It's easier to manage. We can control everything from here now.
Stop! You're making them angry! No!
Take back control with the IBM eServer X series, featuring reliable Intel Xeon processors.
IBM, helping companies innovate in an on-demand world.
Why is Lance Armstrong and Team Discovery not concerned when Jens Voigt takes over the yellow jersey? Because they knew of days like this. Here is the yellow jersey finishing 31 minutes after Lance Armstrong and Alejandro Valverde. Welcome back. A lot to talk about. One of the great team displays in cycling that you could ever see, and it started early in the stage, and it set Lance Armstrong perfectly up. It's like they are the offensive line, and he's the fullback to carry it through. And they've got all this great radio communication, which is a big part of the tour now, but you get the sense that Lance has a sense of what's going on behind him, and when he heard that Vinokurov was fading, bang!
Yes, it seems it's uncanny that Lance has a sense what the other athletes are going through in the breakaway when he's trying to win the Tour. He knows when they're in trouble even before he gets the report on the radio. Here's Vinokurov, asphyxiated by the bruising tempo set by the Discovery team. George Hincapie and Jaroslav Popovic still on the front of the bike race at that point. Jaroslav Popovic, then Lance sensing the other riders also in trouble, like Ulrich, like Kloden. Even Ivan Basso says to Popovic, now is the moment, put the hammer down.
And then in any team race, it eventually comes down to one guy having to do it by himself, and Lance Armstrong was clearly comfortable with doing that. But imagine, Popovic, the man he handed the last ball to, was the guy who crashed on the descent from the first climb at 60 miles an hour.
Unbelievable. It's awesome.
That is just nuts. Now, what's going through Lance's head on the sprint finish by Alejandro Valverde that propels him into the white jersey today?
Lance Armstrong really wanted to win the stage to cap off an incredible effort by his team. But Valverde, a fast sprinter, even on the flats in the bunch sprints, one of the few sprinters that can actually climb well. He's a good time trialist. That was a great effort by Alejandro Valverde. Was close a few days ago, and now he did what we expect him to do, reveal himself as a contender for the future of the Tour de France. Another new name on the horizon.
And no one could respect what Valverde did more than Lance Armstrong, because he set the tone of those last miles, and thus came the handshake.
Yes, Lance the first to congratulate a man who beat him fair and square in the sprint, and Lance was very gracious in that little gesture there, reaching out his hand to shake Valverde's hand for a great effort at the top of the climb in Courchevel.
Bob, Lance Armstrong and Discovery just absolutely blew T-Mobile apart today. Ulrich included in that. Can he possibly recover from this after being passed in the time trial?
I mean, that is a bone-crushing tempo being set by the Discovery team, and you can get the feeling that Jan Ulrich is in trouble. You can see his eyes are popping out of his head even before the real accelerations have begun. He fought as hard as he could to the finish, lost over 2 minutes at the end of the day. I think that we've seen the end of the Kaiser's challenge for this year's Tour de France on Lance Armstrong.
All right, to the rest of the field behind the first finishing two, the good news and the bad news. The good news is you survived today. The bad news is, guess what? Stage 11 is even harder.
Tomorrow's stage has the highest climb in the Tour down to Briançon from Courchevel. So if you think that today's was tough, tomorrow is just as tough, even a little bit tougher. The map brought to us by Mitchell. Tomorrow, stage number 11, Col de Madeleine, a very long climb, over 2,000 meters. And then there is the Telegraph. That's about halfway up the monster of the Tour this year, 2,645 meters. Briançon, 1,200 feet, 173 kilometers long.
Yeah, those are a couple of historic climbs. In tomorrow's stage 11, our coverage begins at an earlier time, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, middle of the night out west. Our expanded coverage, of course, comes your way at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and 9 p.m. Pacific. Now, tomorrow morning, beginning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, OLN's coverage of Stage 11 will be on the big screen in Times Square. If you can't be in Times Square in New York City, we'll show you what's going on there during our 5 hours of coverage. That's the big screen in Times Square tomorrow, starting in the morning. So, Stage 10, even more dramatic than one could have imagined. The climbs up the two Category 1s today started simply for some breakaways. It eventually led to a pack of 9. The ponytailed Frenchman grabbed the lead for a while on a hairy 60-mile-an-hour descent. But then eventually Team Discovery avoided mishaps like this and collected themselves at the front of the peloton. Strategically perfect, setting a pace that no one could possibly come up with, showing a depth that none of Lance Armstrong's rivals could possibly compete with. And when time was right, they handed it off to the man who defines the team, saying goodbye to the sport, hoping to do so with a 7th consecutive Tour, and putting himself in position now to hold on to the yellow jersey for the rest of this 2005 Tour de France. Lance Armstrong saying it's the last time, and he's treating every possible moment as if it is just that. When it came down to just him against one other man, he was able to salute the effort that won the stage, having obliterated the rivals behind him. Lance Armstrong is once again back in the yellow jersey, having not enjoyed the first time the circumstances allowed him to wear it. The Tour takes a major change. We'll see you tomorrow for Stage 11.